When the blizzard hit Black Ridge Summit, Evan Brooks thought the worst part of the company retreat would be small talk with strangers. He was wrong. The moment the cabin assignments were announced and he heard Lauren Hale's name, his ice-cold supervisor who'd made his last 6 months a professional nightmare, paired with his own, he knew this storm would change everything. By morning, either their careers would be over or something far more dangerous would begin. Before we dive into this story, I want to ask you something. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please hit that like button and comment with your city below. I love seeing how far these stories travel, from New York to Tokyo, from small towns to big cities. Your engagement helps me know this story matters to you. Now let's get back to that cabin, where Evan and Lauren are about to face the longest night of their lives. The warning came too late. Evan Brooks stood in the main lodge of Black Ridge Summit Resort, his phone pressed to his ear as his ex-wife's voice cut through the static. "I don't care about your company retreat, Evan. Mia has a fever, and I have plans. You need to come get her. Rachel, I'm 3 hours away and there's a storm. Figure it out. I'll drop her at your mother's in 2 hours." The line went dead. Evan closed his eyes, pressing his thumb and forefinger against the bridge of his nose. Outside the lodge windows, snow had begun to fall in thick, heavy flakes that seemed to multiply with each passing minute. He'd known this retreat was a mistake the moment his boss had announced it. 2 days of team building at a remote mountain resort, mandatory for all senior staff. As a single father barely holding his life together, mandatory anything was a problem. "Brooks." The voice behind him carried the crisp efficiency of someone who'd never missed a deadline or tolerated an excuse. "The cabin assignments are posted." He turned to find Lauren Hale standing 3 feet away, her dark hair pulled back in its usual severe bun, her gray eyes assessing him with the same cool precision she brought to every project review. For 6 months, she'd been his supervisor, and for 6 months, he'd walked on eggshells around her exacting standards and impossibly high expectations. She was brilliant. He'd give her that. The youngest department head Meyer and Associates had ever appointed, a woman who'd clawed her way to the top through sheer competence and an apparent inability to suffer fools. She was also, if he was being honest in the privacy of his own thoughts, strikingly beautiful in a way that made her professional severity all the more intimidating. "Thanks for the update," Evan said, moving toward the assignment board. His mind was already calculating drive times, weather windows, and the probability that Rachel would actually follow through on her threat to leave Mia with his mother, who had a hip replacement scheduled for next week. He scanned the list of names and cabin numbers, searching for his own. When he found it, his stomach dropped. Cabin 7. Evan Brooks, Lauren Hale. "There's been a mistake," he said, the words automatic. "I already checked." Lauren appeared beside him, close enough that he caught the faint scent of something expensive and understated, probably whatever perfume women who ran departments and intimidated grown men wore. Mitchell confirmed it. "The booking system paired rooms randomly. We're professionals. We can handle 1 night of shared accommodation." 1 night. Under normal circumstances, maybe. But these weren't normal circumstances. The snow outside had intensified, and his phone buzzed with a weather alert. Winter storm warning. Blizzard conditions expected. Travel not recommended. "I actually need to leave," Evan said, pulling up his ex-wife's contact. "Family emergency." Lauren's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Not sympathy exactly, but a kind of recognition. "The roads are closing. Mitchell just got word from the resort management. We're being advised to shelter in place." "I have to try. My daughter—" "How old?" The question surprised him. In 6 months of working under Lauren's supervision, she'd never asked him anything personal. 7. "She's sick, and my ex-wife is—" He trailed off, unwilling to air his failed marriage to the woman who already seemed to think he was perpetually 2 steps behind. Lauren pulled out her own phone, her fingers moving with decisive speed. "What's your mother's number?" "Why?" "Because you're about to do something stupid like drive into a blizzard, and your daughter needs at least 1 living parent." She held out her hand. "Give me the number. I'll call and arrange a medical consultation service. They can do a house call if her fever spikes." Evan stared at her. This was not the Lauren Hale he knew, the one who'd sent back his stadium renovation proposal 3 times with notes that grew increasingly terse, the one who ran meetings like military operations and seemed to view small talk as a personal affront. "I can handle my own family situation," he said, hearing the defensiveness in his voice and hating it. "I'm sure you can." Lauren's tone suggested she thought no such thing. "But you can't handle a blizzard, a closed highway, and a sick child 3 hours away simultaneously. So either give me the number or spend the evening making phone calls from a cabin we're both stuck in anyway." She had a point. Evan hated that she had a point. He rattled off his mother's number, then listened as Lauren made 3 calls in rapid succession. One to his mother, explaining the situation with a brisk competence that somehow made it sound manageable. One to a medical service that apparently made emergency house calls. And one to someone named Patricia, who seemed to owe Lauren a favor and agreed to check on the Brooks residence personally. When she hung up, Lauren handed his phone back. "Your mother will text you updates every 2 hours. The doctor will be there within 40 minutes. Patricia is a retired pediatric nurse who lives 6 blocks from your mother. She's going to stay until you can get there tomorrow." "I don't know what to say." "Thank you is traditional." Lauren picked up her weekend bag from where she'd set it by the assignment board. "Cabin 7 is supposed to be on the west side. We should get settled before the storm gets worse." They walked in silence through the lodge, past clusters of colleagues who'd already broken into the beer and started the team building with aggressive competitiveness over a dartboard. Evan caught a few glances, some curious, some sympathetic, one from Jenkins in accounting that seemed outright gleeful at the prospect of watching uptight Lauren Hale forced to spend a night with someone. The snow hit them the moment they stepped outside. What had been heavy flakes 15 minutes ago had become a wall of white, the wind driving the snow horizontal across the grounds. Evan could barely see the row of cabins that lined the property, each one a small luxury structure designed to give executives the illusion of rustic isolation while maintaining hotel-quality amenities. "Stay close," Lauren said, raising her voice to be heard over the wind. "The path markers should guide us." Should. That was doing a lot of work in that sentence. They made their way along the snow-covered path, Evan's dress shoes, because of course he'd worn dress shoes to a mountain retreat, providing almost no traction on the increasingly icy ground. Twice he felt himself start to slip, and twice Lauren's hand shot out to steady him, her grip surprisingly strong. Cabin 7 sat at the far end of the row, partially obscured by pine trees that groaned under the weight of accumulating snow. Lauren produced a keycard from her pocket and swiped it through the reader. The lock clicked, and they stumbled inside, pushing the door closed against the wind. The silence that followed was almost shocking. Evan stood in the entryway, snow melting off his jacket and forming a puddle on the hardwood floor. The cabin was smaller than he'd expected, a single large room with a kitchenette along one wall, a stone fireplace dominating another, and a bed that suddenly seemed enormous positioned near the window. One bed. "I'll take the couch," he said automatically. Lauren was already moving through the space, checking the thermostat, testing the lights, examining the fireplace with the same methodical attention she brought to blueprints and budget reports. "The couch is decorative. You'd have better luck sleeping in the bathtub. We'll figure it out later. Right now we need to get warm and assess our situation." Our situation, as if they were colleagues trapped in an emergency scenario, which Evan supposed they were. He shrugged off his wet jacket and moved toward the fireplace, where someone had thoughtfully left a stack of firewood and kindling. "Do you know how to build a fire?" Lauren asked, pulling off her own coat and revealing a cream-colored sweater that made her look less like a department head and more like an actual human being. "I'm an architect. I've designed 17 fireplaces. I think I can manage to use one. Designing and operating are different skills, but I'll trust your confidence." She disappeared into the bathroom, returning a moment later with towels. She tossed one to him. "Dry your hair before you freeze." Evan caught the towel and found himself smiling despite everything. "You know, this is the most words you've spoken to me outside of a project meeting." "This isn't a project meeting." "No kidding." He knelt by the fireplace, arranging kindling and wood the way his father had taught him during camping trips that felt like a lifetime ago. Back when his biggest worry was whether he'd packed enough marshmallows, before divorce and custody arrangements and ex-wives who treated his time with their daughter like an inconvenience. The fire caught on the second match, flames licking up through the kindling and casting dancing shadows across the cabin's walls. Warmth began to spread through the small space almost immediately. "Not bad," Lauren said, settling into one of the chairs positioned near the fireplace. She'd let her hair down, and it fell past her shoulders in dark waves that transformed her severe professional image into something softer, more approachable. Evan pulled over the second chair, suddenly aware of how intimate this felt. The two of them in a small cabin, a fire crackling, the storm raging outside like something from a movie. So, what now? Do we do icebreakers? Team-building exercises? I'd rather eat glass. Lauren pulled her phone from her pocket, frowned at the screen. And we're officially without cell service. The storm must have taken out the tower. Great, so we're trapped, cut off, and forced to actually talk to each other like humans. Is that such a terrible prospect? Evan looked at her, really looked at her for the first time without the filter of professional hierarchy and workplace anxiety. I don't know. Is it? You've never exactly been warm and fuzzy at the office. Warm and fuzzy don't keep a department running or convince clients to trust a 32-year-old woman with their $50 million projects. Lauren's voice was matter-of-fact, neither defensive nor apologetic. But you're right. I'm demanding. I expect excellence because I have to be twice as good to get half the respect. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's reality. She met his eyes directly, and Evan saw something there he'd never noticed before. Exhaustion. Not physical tiredness, but the bone-deep weariness of someone who'd been fighting for every inch of ground for so long they'd forgotten what it felt like to relax. For what it's worth, I push you because you're better than you think you are. Your stadium design was brilliant. I sent it back 3 times because I wanted you to see that, to stop second-guessing yourself. You could have just said that. Could I? In an office where Henderson still calls me sweetheart in meetings, and Mitchell assumes every good idea I have came from one of my male colleagues, I don't have the luxury of being warm and fuzzy, Evan. I have to be undeniable. The use of his first name startled him. In 6 months, she'd never called him anything but Brooks. I never thought about it that way, he admitted. I just thought you didn't like me. I don't dislike you. I just needed you to stop apologizing for being talented. Lauren stood, moving to the kitchenette where someone had stocked basic supplies. Are you hungry? There's not much, but I can probably make something edible. You cook? I live alone and work 70-hour weeks. Of course I cook. Otherwise I'd survive on vending machine food and takeout. She pulled out pasta, a jar of sauce, and some wilted vegetables. It won't be gourmet, but it'll be warm. So Evan joined her in the small kitchen, aware of how close they had to stand to both fit in the space. Let me help. I'm decent with a knife. They worked in companionable silence, Lauren boiling water while Evan chopped vegetables, the storm outside intensifying to the point where visibility beyond the windows had disappeared completely. It was just white snow, white wind, white noise that seemed to isolate them from the rest of the world. Your daughter, Lauren said as she stirred pasta. What's her name? Mia. She's 7, likes dinosaurs and soccer, and thinks architecture is boring except for castles. Smart kid. Most architecture is boring. Lauren added vegetables to the sauce. Does she live with you? Week on, week off with her mother. It's complicated. Rachel remarried, has a new baby, and sometimes I think Mia feels like a reminder of a life her mother wants to forget. Evan hadn't meant to say that, hadn't meant to offer up that particular wound to someone who was still, technically, his supervisor. But Lauren just nodded. That's hard on everyone, especially Mia. You sound like you know something about it. My parents divorced when I was 8. My mother remarried quickly, a lawyer who already had 2 kids and didn't want a third. I became the complicated one, the reminder of the first marriage that didn't work. Lauren drained the pasta with sharp, efficient movements. I spent a lot of time feeling like an inconvenience. I wouldn't wish that on any kid. Evan watched her plate the food, this woman who'd terrified him for 6 months now revealing pieces of herself he'd never imagined existed beneath the professional armor. Is that why you work so hard? To prove you're not an inconvenience? Probably. That's what therapists are for, connecting dots between childhood trauma and adult overachievement. She handed him a plate, their fingers brushing in the exchange. The contact was brief, meaningless, but Evan felt it like a spark of static electricity. Eat. We're going to need energy to keep that fire going. They ate sitting on the floor in front of the fireplace, plates balanced on their knees, the wind howling outside with a ferocity that made the cabin walls creak. The power flickered once, twice, then died completely, leaving them with only the firelight. "Well," Lauren said into the darkness, "that's not ideal." Evan set his plate aside and added another log to the fire. The flames leaped higher, casting their shadows huge against the walls. "At least we have heat and light. Could be worse. Could be better." Always the optimist. Always the realist. But she was almost smiling when she said it, and Evan realized he'd never seen her smile. Not really. Not like this, small and genuine and almost playful. They cleaned up using bottled water, the cabin growing colder despite the fire. Evan could see his breath when he moved away from the immediate heat source, and Lauren had wrapped herself in one of the decorative throw blankets that probably cost more than his monthly child support payment. "We need to talk about the sleeping arrangement," Lauren said, eyeing the bed. "That couch is decorative and the temperature is dropping. We're going to need shared body heat to make it through the night safely." "Are you seriously suggesting we share a bed?" "I'm seriously suggesting we don't die of hypothermia to avoid awkwardness. We're both adults. We can share a bed platonically." Platonically. Right. Evan looked at the bed, then at Lauren wrapped in her blanket, firelight turning her hair bronze and gold, and wondered when exactly his cold, severe supervisor had become someone he very much wanted to be close to. "Fine," he said, because the alternative was freezing, and because he was curious what it would be like to drop the professional pretense completely. "But I'm keeping my clothes on." "Wasn't planning otherwise, Brooks?" Brooks. They were back to last names, back to safety. They prepared for bed in awkward silence, Lauren disappearing into the bathroom first, emerging in layers that suggested she'd packed for Arctic conditions. Evan followed, brushing his teeth with his finger in cold water, staring at his reflection in the mirror and wondering what the hell he was doing. This was his supervisor. This was Lauren Hale, Ice Queen of Meyer and Associates, the woman who'd made grown men cry in project reviews. This was not someone he should be noticing had incredible eyes and a smile that transformed her entire face. When he emerged, Lauren was already in bed, positioned on the far right side, the blankets pulled up to her chin. She'd left the left side open for him and Evan climbed in carefully, maintaining a respectful distance that felt ridiculous given the circumstances. The fire crackled, the wind howled, the bed was surprisingly comfortable. "Evan?" Lauren's voice in the darkness was softer than he'd ever heard it. "Yeah?" "Thank you for not making this weirder than it has to be. Thank you for making sure my daughter was taken care of. That was really kind. Don't spread it around. I have a reputation to maintain." He smiled in the darkness. "Your secret's safe with me." They lay in silence for a while, the storm outside a constant presence, the fire casting shifting patterns of light across the ceiling. Evan could feel the warmth radiating from Lauren's body, close but not touching, and found himself hyper-aware of every breath, every small movement. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "You just did, but go ahead. Why did you really transfer to department head? Everyone knows you could have made partner." The silence stretched so long he thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, "Because I got tired of fighting. Partner meant another 10 years of proving myself to men who'd never see me as equal. Department head meant building something mine, mentoring people who might actually listen." She paused. "And because I watched my mother sacrifice everything to climb a ladder that never wanted her on it. I didn't want to become that." "Is that what you think you're doing? Building something yours?" "I'm trying. Some days it feels possible. Other days I just feel tired." Lauren shifted, and suddenly she was closer, close enough that Evan could feel her breath against his shoulder. "What about you? Why architecture? Why not something more stable?" "Because buildings outlast us. Because I wanted to make something that mattered, something Mia could point to one day and say, 'My dad made that.'" He stared at the ceiling, at the dancing shadows. "And because after my marriage fell apart, I needed to believe I was good at building something." "You are. That stadium design was extraordinary, the way you integrated the environmental systems with the structural elements. That wasn't just good architecture, that was art." The compliment hit him harder than it should have. "You never said that." I sent it back 3 times to make you prove it to yourself. But I always knew. Lauren propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him in the firelight. You doubt yourself too much, Evan. You're brilliant, and you hide it behind apologies and second-guessing. And you're not as cold as you pretend to be. Maybe we both wear armor to work. Maybe we both need to stop. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Evan didn't want to name, because naming it would make it real, would make it something he'd have to deal with after this night was over. Lauren was still propped on her elbow, close enough to touch, her eyes reflecting the firelight and something else, something that looked almost like vulnerability. We should sleep, she said finally, but she didn't move away. Tomorrow they'll plow us out, and everything goes back to normal. What if I don't want normal? The words were out before Evan could stop them, honest and raw and probably stupid, given that this was his supervisor, his boss, someone who held his career trajectory in her hands. But Lauren didn't pull away. Instead, she reached out, her hand finding his in the darkness, her fingers lacing through his with a deliberateness that suggested this was a choice, not an accident. Then we'll deal with tomorrow, she said quietly. But right now, in this cabin, with this storm, maybe we can just be Evan and Lauren, not Brooks and Hale, not employee and supervisor, just 2 people stuck in a blizzard. Just 2 people, Evan repeated, his thumb tracing circles against her palm. The fire was dying down, but neither of them moved to feed it. The cold was creeping in, but with Lauren's hand in his, Evan barely noticed. They talked through the darkness, about childhoods and dreams, about failures and fears, about the distance between who they were at work and who they were everywhere else. Somewhere around midnight, they moved closer, sharing warmth and whispered confidences. Lauren's head ended up on his shoulder, his arm around her, and it felt natural rather than calculated, like something that had been waiting to happen for months. This is probably a mistake, Lauren murmured against his chest. Probably, Evan agreed, but neither of them pulled away. Outside, the blizzard raged on, burying Cabin 7 in snow and cutting them off from the world. Inside, in the dying firelight, 2 people who'd spent months maintaining professional distance discovered what happened when the distance disappeared. When Evan woke hours later to feed the fire, Lauren was curled against him, her breathing deep and even, her hand still holding his. He should have felt panic about what this meant, about Monday morning, about the 1,000 professional complications this single night could create. Instead, he felt peace. And as he settled back down, pulling her closer against the cold, Evan Brooks realized that being trapped in a blizzard with Lauren Hale might be the best thing that had happened to him in years. The storm outside wasn't ending anytime soon. But inside Cabin 7, something was just beginning. Dawn came slowly, filtered through layers of snow that had accumulated against the cabin windows overnight. Evan woke to find himself tangled with Lauren in a way that should have been awkward, but somehow wasn't. Her back pressed against his chest, his arm draped over her waist, their legs intertwined beneath blankets that had shifted during the night. The fire had burned down to embers, and the cabin was cold enough that he could see his breath, but where their bodies touched, warmth radiated like a promise. He should move. He should extract himself carefully, rebuild the fire, reestablish the professional distance that had evaporated somewhere around midnight when honest conversation had turned into whispered confessions, and then into this careful intimacy that felt both brand new and strangely inevitable. Instead, he stayed still, memorizing the moment, the weight of her against him, the rise and fall of her breathing. The way her hair smelled faintly of smoke and something floral he couldn't name. In a few hours, they'd be rescued. In a few days, they'd be back at the office, and all of this would become complicated in ways he didn't want to think about yet. "You're awake," Lauren said softly, not moving. "I can tell by your breathing. How long have you been up?" 20 minutes. Maybe 30. I was trying to figure out how to move without waking you." She shifted slightly, turning her head so she could see him over her shoulder. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes still heavy with sleep, and she looked nothing like the Lauren Hale who ran department meetings with military precision. "We should probably talk about this." "Probably." Evan tightened his arm around her waist fractionally, not ready to let go. "Or we could wait until after coffee." "There's no power, remember? No coffee maker." "Then we definitely shouldn't talk about it yet." She laughed, the sound quiet and genuine, and Evan felt it reverberate through both their bodies. You know this changes everything, right? At work. Between us. I know. He pressed his forehead against her shoulder, breathing her in. Does that scare you? Terrifies me. I spent 6 months building credibility as your supervisor. One night, and I've potentially compromised all of it. Lauren's voice was steady, but Evan heard the fear underneath, not of him, but of what other people would say, would think, would assume. If anyone finds out, then we make sure no one finds out. Not yet. Not until we figure out what this is. Evan rolled onto his back, immediately missing her warmth. The cabin ceiling was rough-hewn timber, probably designed to give wealthy executives a taste of rustic authenticity without any actual discomfort. Look, I don't know what happens next, but I know I don't regret last night. We didn't do anything regrettable. We just talked. Lauren sat up, pulling the blankets around her shoulders like armor. In the gray morning light, she looked vulnerable in a way that made Evan's chest ache, and held each other, and maybe crossed about 17 different professional boundaries. Is that the official count, or are you estimating? I'm always estimating. That's what good supervisors do. Assess risk, calculate consequences, plan for contingencies. She stood, moving toward the fireplace with the blanket still wrapped around her. I need to rebuild this fire before we both freeze, and then I need to think clearly, which is impossible when you're looking at me like that. Like what? Like last night meant something. It did mean something, at least to me. Lauren knelt by the fireplace, her hands moving through the familiar motions of arranging kindling and wood, but Evan could see the tremor in her fingers. That's what scares me. Because it meant something to me too, and I don't know how to handle that. I've spent my entire career keeping things professional, keeping people at arm's length. It's safer that way. Safer isn't always better, says the man who drove here knowing his daughter was sick because he was too afraid to tell his boss he couldn't make it. Lauren struck a match, the flame catching and spreading. We're both good at hiding, Evan. We're both scared of different things, but maybe we're more alike than I wanted to admit. The fire began to build, warmth slowly spreading through the cabin. Evan joined her on the floor, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. Outside, the storm had finally broken. No more howling wind, no more horizontal snow. Just a heavy silence that suggested the world beyond the cabin was buried deep. Tell me something true, Evan said. Something you've never told anyone at work. Lauren stared into the flames, her profile sharp and beautiful in the morning light. I'm lonely. I'm successful and respected and absolutely terrified that I've built a life where being excellent is a substitute for being known. She turned to face him. Your turn. Something true. I'm scared I'm failing Mia. That she'll grow up remembering me as the dad who was always stressed, always apologizing, always choosing work over her because I had to prove I was still worth something after Rachel left. The admission hurt coming out, but saying it to Lauren felt safe in a way telling it to anyone else wouldn't have. And I'm scared that I'm not good enough. At work, at parenting, at anything that actually matters. You're good enough. Lauren's hand found his, their fingers interlacing like they'd done it 1,000 times before. You're better than good enough. You're just afraid to believe it. And you're not as alone as you think you are. They sat like that for a long moment, hands joined, shoulders touching, watching the fire grow stronger. Then Lauren's stomach growled audibly, breaking the tension, and they both laughed. Breakfast, Evan said, standing and pulling her up with him. Let's see what we can make without power. They raided the kitchenette, finding granola bars, instant oatmeal that they made with bottled water heated over the fire, and fruit that was starting to turn but still edible. It wasn't much, but eating together felt domestic in a way that should have been strange, and instead felt comfortable. Passing food back and forth, sharing the single usable spoon, comfortable in a silence that required no filling. When do you think they'll get to us? Lauren asked, peeling an orange with careful precision. Depends on how much snow fell. Could be noon, could be later. Evan accepted a segment of orange, their fingers brushing in the exchange. Every touch felt significant now, weighted with the memory of how they'd held each other through the night. Are you in a hurry to leave? I should be. I should want to get back to civilization, back to normal. Back to where things make sense. Lauren popped an orange segment into her mouth, considering. But honestly, part of me wants this storm to last forever. Is that crazy? If it is, we're both crazy. She smiled at that, and Evan felt something shift in his chest. Something that had been carefully locked down since Rachel had announced she was leaving, since he'd become a single father trying to hold everything together with determination and duct tape. He'd forgotten what it felt like to want someone, to be drawn to them, not just physically, but emotionally, intellectually, completely. "Tell me about Mia," Lauren said, settling back against the side of the couch, her knees drawn up. "Really tell me, not the quick summary version you give at work when someone asks how your kid is." So Evan did. He told her about Mia's obsession with dinosaurs that had started when she was 4 and never abated, about the elaborate Jurassic Park she'd built in their backyard out of cardboard boxes and imagination. He told her about Saturday morning soccer games where Mia played defense with a ferocity that reminded him of Lauren's approach to project deadlines. He told her about bedtime stories and math homework struggles and the way Mia had cried when Rachel announced she was having another baby because she was afraid it meant she'd be replaced. "She sounds incredible," Lauren said softly, "and terrifying. Do all 7-year-olds have that much personality?" "Just the good ones. What about you? Do you want kids?" Lauren's expression shifted, something guarded sliding into place. "I used to think so. When I was younger, before I understood what it costs to be a woman in this industry. Now I don't know. How do you balance it? The career ambition and the parenting, don't you feel torn constantly?" "Every single day." Evan moved to sit beside her, their backs against the couch, shoulders touching. "Some days I think I'm failing at both. But then Mia does something, draws me a picture of a building we can make together, or tells me about her day in that rapid-fire way where everything is the most important thing ever, and I remember why it matters. Why both things matter. My mother chose career over everything. My father chose his new family over me. I watched them both make choices that seemed logical and ended up isolated and bitter." Lauren's voice was quiet, thoughtful. "I don't want that, but I also don't know how to want anything else. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you're terrified of wanting things because every time you've wanted something, it's been taken away or used against you." Evan shifted so he could see her face. "Your parents' approval, professional respect, basic human consideration. You've learned to armor yourself so well that you've forgotten it's okay to be vulnerable sometimes. Vulnerability is weakness in my world. No, vulnerability is strength. It's the bravest thing you can do. Let someone see who you really are and trust they won't use it against you." Lauren looked at him for a long moment, her gray eyes searching his face. "Is that what you're doing right now? Being brave?" "I'm trying. It's been a while since I let anyone past the stressed single dad exterior." Evan reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that felt both intimate and natural. "But something about being trapped in a blizzard with you makes honesty feel possible. Something about you makes honesty feel safe." Lauren leaned into his touch, just slightly, and Evan felt his heart rate kick up. "That's new for me. Usually I feel like I have to calculate every word, every expression, make sure nothing can be misinterpreted or used as ammunition. You don't have to do that here. Not with me." "What happens when we leave? When we go back to the office and I'm your supervisor again, and you're my employee, and none of this," she gestured between them, "is allowed?" It was the question Evan had been avoiding since he woke up. The practical, logical question that had no good answer. "I don't know, but I know I don't want to pretend this didn't happen." "Neither do I, but wanting something and having it be wise are different things." Lauren stood abruptly, moving to the window where she scraped away frost to peer outside. "There's so much snow, we're completely buried. Even if they've started plowing the main roads, it'll take hours to get to us." Hours. They had hours left in this bubble where reality was suspended and honesty was possible. Evan joined her at the window, standing close enough that he could feel her warmth, close enough to touch, if he was brave enough to try. "What if we use those hours?" he said quietly. "Use them how?" "To figure out if this is just cabin fever and proximity, or if it's something real." Evan turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. No more talking about Monday, no more worrying about what people will think, just us, here, being honest. And then, when they dig us out, we decide together what comes next. Lauren's expression was conflicted, fear and want warring across her features. That's a terrible idea. Probably. We could ruin everything. Our working relationship, your career trajectory, my reputation. We could. Evan let his hands slide down her arms until he was holding her hands. Or we could find something neither of us knew we were looking for. You're asking me to take a risk. I'm asking you to be brave. You told me last night that I doubt myself too much. Well, you protect yourself too much. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones that scare us. Lauren's laugh was shaky. When did you become the wise one? Somewhere between midnight and dawn, while holding you. Evan pulled her closer, watching her eyes widen fractionally. I want to kiss you. I wanted to kiss you last night, but I thought it was too fast, too much. But we're running out of time, and I don't want to leave this cabin without knowing what that feels like. Evan, tell me no if you want. I'll respect it. We can spend the next few hours playing cards and pretending we're just colleagues stuck in an unfortunate situation. He raised one hand to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. But if there's any part of you that wants this too, that wants to see where this goes, then say yes. Be brave with me. For a moment, Lauren just stared at him, her breathing quick and shallow. Then she whispered, yes. The kiss started gentle, a question more than a statement, careful and exploratory. But the moment their lips met, something clicked into place with an inevitability that made Evan's chest ache. This wasn't cabin fever or proximity or convenience. This was recognition. Two people who'd been circling each other for months without realizing it, finally finding the courage to close the distance. Lauren made a small sound against his mouth, her hands coming up to fist in his shirt, and Evan deepened the kiss, pulling her flesh against him. She tasted like oranges and possibilities, and when she kissed him back with a hunger that matched his own, he felt something unlock inside himself, something that had been carefully controlled and contained since his marriage fell apart. They broke apart breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, and Evan saw that Lauren's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Hey, he said softly. What's wrong? Nothing, everything. She laughed, the sound caught between joy and fear. I didn't know it could feel like this. I've had relationships, but they were always, practical, compatible, safe. This doesn't feel safe. Is that bad? I don't know. Ask me again when my heart rate returns to normal. Lauren kissed him again, slower this time, savoring. We're really doing this, aren't we? Despite all the reasons we shouldn't. Seems that way. I'm going to need rules, boundaries, a plan for how we handle this at work. Evan smiled against her mouth. Of course you are. You're Lauren Hale. You probably want a spreadsheet with contingency scenarios. Don't mock my coping mechanisms. But she was smiling too, and when she pulled him back toward the fire, settling them both on the floor with blankets and pillows from the bed, it felt natural. Right. They spent the next hours in a bubble of intimacy that was both new and comfortable, kissing and talking, learning each other's bodies and histories in equal measure. Lauren told him about her first job out of graduate school, working for a firm where the senior partner had tried to take credit for her designs until she'd documented everything and gone to his boss with proof. Evan told her about the night Rachel had announced she wanted a divorce, how he'd driven to his parents' house at 2 a.m. because he didn't know where else to go. She said I was too focused on my career, Evan said. Lauren's head pillowed on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. That I'd become boring, predictable, that she needed someone who made her feel alive. She was wrong. You're not boring. Lauren propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. You're careful. There's a difference. You're a single father trying to build a career and raise a daughter. That's not boring, that's responsible. Rachel didn't see it that way. She saw someone who came home tired, who couldn't be spontaneous because spontaneous meant finding a babysitter and rearranging schedules, someone who'd rather spend Saturday at the Science Museum with a 7-year-old than at a party with adults. She was an idiot. Lauren's voice was fierce. And her loss is, well, it's my gain, apparently. Is it? Are you sure you want to sign up for someone with this much baggage? Everyone has baggage, Evan. Mine is just better organized. She kissed him softly. Besides, I like Mia already, and I've never even met her. Anyone who builds Jurassic Park in her backyard and plays defense like a linebacker has excellent priorities. You say that now. Wait until you see her room. It's like a dinosaur museum exploded. Sounds perfect. I was a very serious child who organized her books by color and kept her room pristine. I could use some chaos in my life. The conversation drifted, intimate and easy, punctuated by kisses and comfortable silences. Around noon, they heard engines in the distance, snowplows working their way through the resort property. Reality was approaching, and Evan felt Lauren tense against him. We need to talk about the plan, she said, sitting up and pulling her hair back into its usual severe bun. Just like that, she was transforming back into Lauren Hale, department head, armor clicking into place piece by piece. How we handle this at work? What are you thinking? Carefully. We handle this very carefully. Lauren moved to gather their scattered belongings, her movements efficient and controlled. We can't let anyone know. Not yet. Not until we figure out if this is sustainable beyond a snow-trapped cabin. So we pretend nothing happened. No. We're honest with each other, but private everywhere else. I go back to being your supervisor. You go back to being my employee. And we find time outside of work to figure out if this is real. She turned to face him, and Evan saw the fear in her eyes despite her composed exterior. I need time, Evan. Time to prove this wasn't a mistake. Time to make sure we're not jeopardizing everything we've worked for. How much time? I don't know, but I know I can't handle losing my professional credibility because someone thinks I'm sleeping with my employees. The words were harsh, but her voice was soft. Please understand, it's not that I don't want this. It's that I need to protect what I've built. Evan stood, crossing to her and taking her hands. I understand. I don't love it, but I understand. So what's the plan? I'll request a transfer. Different department, same company. It removes the direct supervisor relationship and gives us space to see each other without the ethics violation. Lauren squeezed his hands. It'll take a few weeks to process, maybe a month. Until then, we're professional at work. Completely professional. And outside of work? Outside of work, we take this slow. Coffee dates, dinners. Normal relationship progression for two people who aren't trapped in a cabin during a blizzard. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm scared, Evan. I'm terrified this won't work. Or worse, that it will work and I'll have to choose between my career and something that makes me happy. You won't have to choose. We'll figure it out together. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll try. That I won't pressure you. That I'll respect your boundaries. That I'll be patient while you work through the fear. Evan pulled her close, breathing in her scent one last time before the rescue team arrived. Last night changed something for me, Lauren. I don't know where this goes, but I know I want to find out. With you. She buried her face in his chest, her arms tight around his waist. This is crazy. We barely know each other outside of project meetings and budget reviews. Then we get to know each other, the normal way, without life-threatening weather as a catalyst. The sound of snowplows grew louder, accompanied by voices calling out cabin numbers. Their time was running out. Evan? Lauren pulled back, looking up at him. Thank you for last night, for being honest, for making me feel like vulnerability isn't weakness. Thank you for letting me see who you really are, for being brave. She kissed him one last time, soft and sweet and full of promise, before the knock came at the door announcing their rescue. They pulled apart, and Evan watched Lauren complete her transformation, shoulders back, expression neutral, every trace of the woman who'd held him through the night carefully hidden beneath professional composure. The rescue was efficient and impersonal. The resort staff apologized for the inconvenience, explained that the storm had been worse than predicted, offered compensation in the form of free future stays. Lauren accepted their apologies with cool grace, already checking her phone for messages now that service had been restored. Evan caught her eye once as they were being escorted back to the main lodge, and she gave him the smallest smile. Private, meant only for him. It said everything words couldn't. This wasn't over, this was just beginning. And somehow they'd figure out how to bridge the distance between who they had to be at work and who they wanted to be everywhere else. At the lodge, they separated naturally. Lauren to debrief with Mitchell about the retreat logistics, Evan to coordinate his return home to Mia. He watched her across the room, composed and professional, giving no indication that 12 hours ago she'd been wrapped around him, whispering secrets and fears. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Made it home okay? Well, Evan smiled, typing back, "Not home yet. Still thinking about cabin 7. Me too. Coffee next week? Somewhere no one from work goes. It's a date, not a date. Strategic meeting to discuss professional development. Right. Professional development. That's definitely what we'll call it." He could almost see her smiling as she typed, "Go see your daughter. I'll text you when I've requested the transfer." Lauren? Yes? Last night wasn't a mistake. The response took longer this time, and Evan watched across the room as Lauren's fingers paused over her phone screen. Finally. No. It really wasn't. Now go. Be a dad. We'll figure out the rest later. Evan pocketed his phone and headed for his car, which had been dug out and was already warming up courtesy of the resort staff. As he drove away from Black Ridge Summit, watching the resort disappear in his rearview mirror, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate kind that came from wishing things would get better, but the solid kind that came from knowing they already had. The roads were treacherous, but the storm had passed. Mia was waiting, and somewhere in the city, Lauren Hale was figuring out how to transfer departments without anyone asking too many questions. They had time, they had a plan, and they had something neither of them had expected to find trapped in a snowstorm, a reason to be brave. The drive home took twice as long as usual, the highway still hazardous despite the plows working overtime. Evan barely noticed. His mind kept drifting back to the cabin, to Lauren's weight against him in the darkness, to the way she'd kissed him like she was afraid and brave at the same time. His phone sat in the cup holder, silent, but he could feel its presence, the promise of her text sitting there, proof that the last 12 hours had actually happened. When he finally pulled into his mother's driveway, Mia burst through the front door before he'd even turned off the engine. She launched herself at him the moment he opened the car door, her small body colliding with his legs hard enough to make him stagger. "Daddy, you're home! The snow was so big and Grandma said you were stuck, and I was scared, but then the nurse lady came and she let me listen to my heart with her stethoscope, and it was so cool." The words tumbled out in Mia's typical rapid-fire style, everything urgent and important. "And I'm not sick anymore, see? Patricia said it was just a little fever, and I'm all better now." Evan scooped her up, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo and the faint lingering smell of the vapor rub his mother still swore by. "I can see that. You look pretty healthy for someone who was dying yesterday." "I wasn't dying, Daddy. Mom just said that because she wanted to go to her dinner thing." Mia pulled back to look at him seriously, her brown eyes, Rachel's eyes, studying his face. "You look different. Did something happen at your work trip?" "Just a snowstorm, baby. Nothing exciting." The lie tasted strange on his tongue, but he couldn't exactly explain to his 7-year-old that something fundamental had shifted in the last 24 hours. "Did you have fun with Grandma?" "She let me stay up late and we watched a movie with dinosaurs that wasn't even scientifically accurate, but it was still good because there was a T-Rex that saved people instead of eating them." Mia squirmed down, grabbing his hand. "Come inside. Grandma made cookies and I saved you 3, but I might have eaten parts of them while I was saving them." His mother met them at the door, her walker positioned carefully beside her as she enveloped him in a hug that smelled like vanilla and home. "You look exhausted. Was it that bad?" "The storm? It was intense. They kept us sheltered in place until this morning." Evan followed her into the kitchen, where evidence of Mia's cookie assistance was scattered across every available surface. "Thank you for taking care of her, and thank Lauren for sending Patricia. That was above and beyond." "Lauren?" His mother raised an eyebrow, the look that meant she was filing away information for future interrogation. "That would be your supervisor? The one you've been complaining about for 6 months?" "I haven't been complaining that much." "You called her the Ice Queen last month. I may have been hasty in that assessment." Evan accepted the cookie Mia thrust at him, noting that she had indeed eaten significant portions of it. "She's actually not what I expected." "Uh-huh." His mother's tone suggested she heard everything he wasn't saying. "Well, her friend Patricia was lovely. Stayed for 3 hours, played board games with Mia, and checked her temperature every 30 minutes like clockwork. Whatever you did to earn that kind of favor, you should probably do it more often. If she only knew. Evan bit into his cookie and changed the subject. How's your hip? Are you ready for surgery next week? They talked logistics and recovery plans while Mia showed him approximately 7,000 drawings she'd made during her overnight stay, each one a different dinosaur scenario carefully labeled with names Evan could barely pronounce. It was comfortable and familiar and exactly what he needed after the intensity of the last 24 hours. Grounding, real, reminder of what actually mattered. But when his phone buzzed with a text and he saw Lauren's name on the screen, his heart rate kicked up anyway. Mia was explaining the difference between a Brachiosaurus and a Brontosaurus, but Evan's attention split as he read the message. Transfer request submitted. 2 weeks minimum for approval, possibly 4. Don't contact me at work unless it's project related. This has to look completely professional. He typed back with one hand while Mia climbed onto his lap. Understood. Does this mean I can't send you dinosaur facts? Why would you send me dinosaur facts? Mia's current obsession. Did you know the Ankylosaurus had a club tail it used for defense? I did not, but now I'm prepared if one attacks me in a budget meeting. Evan smiled at his phone and his mother noticed. Of course she noticed. The woman had radar for anything involving her son's emotional state. Who's making you smile like that? She asked, settling into her chair with the careful movements of someone managing pain. Just a colleague, work stuff. Work stuff doesn't usually make you look like you're 17 again. Mia twisted to look at his phone screen. Is that Miss Lauren? Can I meet her? Does she like dinosaurs? How do you know about Lauren? Evan's stomach dropped. Grandma said she's the one who sent Patricia, and Patricia said Miss Lauren is very smart and important and works with you. Mia took this as absolute fact. So when can I meet her? She's very busy, baby. She runs a whole department. But you like her? It wasn't a question. Mia had inherited her mother's ability to read people, combined with a 7-year-old's complete lack of filter. You're smiling at your phone like you do when I send you drawings at work. His mother was watching him with undisguised interest, and Evan realized he'd walked into a trap of his own making. She's a colleague, a friend. It's complicated. Complicated means grown-ups don't want to explain things, Mia announced, climbing off his lap. That's okay. You can tell me later. I'm going to go draw Miss Lauren a dinosaur so she knows we want to meet her. She disappeared into the living room, leaving Evan alone with his mother's knowing gaze. A friend, his mother repeated. Since when do you have friends who make you light up like Christmas morning? Mom, don't mom me. I've watched you go through 2 years of divorce aftermath, working yourself half to death and barely remembering to live. If someone's making you smile like that, I want to know about it. Evan sighed, rubbing his face. It's new, very new, and extremely complicated because she's technically my supervisor, though she's requesting a transfer to fix that, and we're taking it slow because neither of us can afford to mess this up professionally. But you like her. I more than like her, which is terrifying because I haven't felt this way about anyone since Rachel, and we both know how that turned out. The admission came easier than expected. His mother had always been his safe place for honesty. We got trapped together during the storm, 24 hours in a cabin with no power and no distractions, and I got to see who she really is beneath the professional armor. She's brilliant and funny and kind, and so scared of being vulnerable that it breaks my heart. And what does Mia think? Mia doesn't know. Nobody knows except you, and you can't say anything, not even to Dad. Lauren needs this transfer to go through without anyone asking questions. His mother studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, I'll keep your secret. But Evan, be careful. Not because I don't trust your judgment, but because Mia's heart is involved too. If this woman becomes part of your life, she becomes part of Mia's life. Make sure she's ready for that before you go too far down this road. I know, I will. Evan glanced toward the living room where he could hear Mia narrating her drawing process to herself. She already asked about Mia last night, wanted to know everything about her. That's a good sign, right? It's a start. The real test is whether she can handle the reality of dating a single father. The schedule complications, the ex-wife drama, the fact that you can't just be spontaneous because there's always a 7-year-old to consider. His mother's expression softened. Rachel couldn't handle it. She wanted the version of you that existed before Mia, and when she couldn't have that, she left. Lauren's different. I hope so. You deserve someone who sees you, all of you, including the parts that are challenging, and chooses you anyway. Mia returned with a drawing of what appeared to be a stegosaurus wearing a business suit, carefully labeled Miss Lauren the Dinosaur Boss. Evan took a photo and sent it to Lauren with the caption, "Apparently you're now immortalized in dinosaur form." The response came quickly. "I'm honored, though I think Stegosaurus is more intimidating than I aspire to be." She picked it because of the spikes. Defense mechanism. Remind you of anyone? I don't have spikes. I have professional boundaries. Same thing. Careful, Brooks. I can still make your life difficult at work. Looking forward to it, Hale. The week that followed was an exercise in restraint that tested Evan's patience at every turn. At work, Lauren was exactly what she'd always been. Demanding, precise, utterly professional. She critiqued his designs with the same sharp attention to detail, ran meetings with military efficiency, and gave absolutely no indication that anything had changed between them. If anything, she was more distant than usual, as if overcompensating for the intimacy of Cabin 7. But at night, his phone would light up with messages that revealed the woman beneath the armor. She sent him articles about architecture and links to TED Talks she thought he'd enjoy. She asked questions about Mia that went beyond polite interest, wanting to know about her favorite books, her friendship dynamics at school, whether she still had nightmares about the divorce. She told him about her day in ways that made him feel included in her life, confessing frustrations and small victories that she clearly shared with no one else. They managed one coffee date that first week, meeting at a place 30 minutes from the office where the chances of running into colleagues were minimal. Lauren arrived 15 minutes early, then texted him from inside asking him to do a reconnaissance pass to make sure no one from Meyer and Associates was there. When he finally slid into the booth across from her, she was gripping her coffee cup like a lifeline. "This is ridiculous," she said without preamble. "I feel like I'm having an affair, except we're not actually doing anything wrong." "Yet?" Evan said, and watched her blush. "Sorry, that was inappropriate workplace commentary." "We're not at the workplace." "Then let me be appropriately inappropriate. You look beautiful, and I've been thinking about kissing you for 6 days straight." Lauren's flush deepened. "You can't say things like that. It makes it very hard to maintain professional distance." "Good." Evan reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "I don't want professional distance. I want to know how your week was. What made you laugh? Whether that client meeting went well." "It went terribly. Henderson took credit for my design modifications, and Mitchell didn't correct him because apparently it's easier to let the men take credit than deal with the confrontation." Lauren's grip on her coffee cup tightened. "I wanted to call you afterward, to vent, to hear you tell me I wasn't overreacting, but I couldn't, because calling you would have been weird and people would have noticed. So tell me now, get it all out." And she did. For 45 minutes, they sat in that coffee shop while Lauren described the casual sexism she navigated daily, the exhaustion of constantly having to prove herself, the isolation of being the only woman in most rooms. Evan listened, asked questions, got angry on her behalf in all the ways that clearly meant something to her. "Thank you," she said finally, her coffee long cold, "for listening, for not trying to fix it or tell me it's not that bad. It is that bad, and I'm sorry you have to deal with it." Evan squeezed her hand. "For what it's worth, everyone in that office knows those design modifications were yours. Henderson taking credit just makes him look like exactly what he is. A mediocre architect who can't compete with your talent." "You're just saying that because you want to kiss me." "I'm saying it because it's true. But yes, I also desperately want to kiss you, and the fact that we're in public is the only thing stopping me." Lauren smiled, the real smile that transformed her entire face. 2 more weeks until the transfer processes. Maybe 3 if there are complications. I don't know how I'm going to make it. One day at a time. One secret coffee date at a time. One text message at a time. Evan glanced at his watch reluctantly. "I have to pick up Mia from school in 20 minutes. "Go, be a dad." But Lauren held onto his hand for a moment longer. "Same time next week?" "I'll be here." They parted in the parking lot with nothing more than a lingering look that somehow felt more intimate than touching. Evan drove to Mia's school feeling like a teenager again, giddy and nervous and completely consumed by someone who was technically still off limits. The second week brought its own challenges. The transfer paperwork hit unexpected delays. Budget approvals needed signatures. Department restructuring required board review. Administrative processes moved at glacial pace. Lauren's frustration bled through her carefully maintained professional exterior, showing in the tightness around her eyes during meetings and the terseness of her email responses. Their second coffee date almost didn't happen. Lauren texted him that morning. "Can't make it. Henderson scheduled an emergency client meeting for this afternoon. Sorry." Evan stared at his phone, disappointment settling heavy in his chest. Then on impulse, he typed, "Dinner instead? My place. I'll cook. Mia will be at Rachel's." The response took 5 minutes that felt like hours. Is that wise? Probably not. But I miss you, and I'm tired of stolen coffee dates. What time? That evening, Evan cleaned his apartment with a thoroughness usually reserved for parental visits, trying to see the space through Lauren's eyes. It wasn't much. A 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, furnished with a mix of practical IKEA and things he'd salvaged from the marriage. Mia's drawings covered the refrigerator, and her soccer cleats were abandoned by the door. It was lived in and real, and nothing like the polished image Lauren projected at work. When the doorbell rang at 7, Evan's heart was hammering against his ribs. Lauren stood in the hallway wearing jeans and a soft blue sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked young and uncertain, holding a bottle of wine like a shield. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Evan stepped back to let her in, hyper-aware of her scanning his space, cataloging details. "Welcome to the chaos." "This isn't chaos. This is lived in." Lauren set the wine on the counter, then turned to face him properly. "And it's very you, comfortable, warm, slightly over-organized." "Slightly?" "The way your books are arranged by both author and color suggests a man who likes systems but also aesthetics." Says the woman who probably has her closet organized by season and garment type. "And color. Don't forget color." Lauren moved closer, and suddenly the apartment felt very small. "Hi." "You already said hi." "I know, but I've been thinking about doing this for 2 weeks, and now that I'm here, I'm nervous." She reached up, touching his face with tentative fingers. "Is that okay? To be nervous?" "It's more than okay." Evan covered her hand with his own. "I'm nervous too. This is our first real date. Not a coffee shop where we're watching the door. Not a cabin where we're trapped. Just us, choosing to be together. No pressure or anything." He smiled and kissed her palm. "Dinner first. Then we can be nervous together." They cooked side by side in his narrow kitchen, Lauren chopping vegetables while Evan managed the pasta and sauce. It should have been awkward, the forced domesticity, the awareness of being alone together for the first time since the storm. Instead, it felt natural. They talked about everything and nothing, comfortable silences punctuated by laughter and the easy banter they'd discovered in Cabin 7. "Mia's drawings are incredible," Lauren said, studying the refrigerator gallery. "Is this one supposed to be you?" Evan looked at the stick figure she was pointing to, disproportionately tall with spiky hair and a huge smile. "Unfortunately, yes. That's me building a castle for dinosaurs. It's apparently my most important professional accomplishment." She's not wrong. Dinosaur castles are severely underrepresented in modern architecture. "I'll add it to my portfolio." They ate at his small dining table, wine glasses catching the light, and Evan felt something settle in his chest that had been restless since the storm. This was what he'd been missing. Not just company, but connection. Someone who got his jokes, who challenged his thinking, who made him want to be braver than he was. "Can I ask you something?" Lauren said as they cleared the dishes. "What happened with Rachel? You mentioned the divorce, but you never said why." Evan rinsed a plate, considering how much to share. "She married the version of me that existed before real life got complicated, before job stress and parenting exhaustion and mortgage payments. When we were dating, I was spontaneous and fun and always up for an adventure. After Mia was born, I became responsible and careful and, according to Rachel, boring." "You're not boring." She thought I was. She wanted someone who'd still take midnight road trips and blow money on concerts and be exciting. I wanted someone who'd understand that being a parent meant sometimes you're just tired, and exciting looks like watching your kid learn to read. He turned to face Lauren. The final straw was when I missed her birthday dinner because Mia had an asthma attack and ended up in the ER. Rachel said I was choosing Mia over her. I said Mia was a child who needed her father. She filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Lauren moved closer, her hand finding his. She was wrong. What you did wasn't choosing. It was parenting. There was no choice to make. Try explaining that to someone who felt like she'd lost her husband to a 7-year-old. Her loss. Lauren squeezed his hand. But it makes sense now. Why you're so careful about this, about us? You're scared I'll leave when reality gets hard. Aren't you scared of the same thing? That I'll turn out to be like every other man who couldn't handle your success? Terrified, Lauren pulled him toward the couch, settling beside him with a naturalness that suggested they'd done this 100 times before. But I'm trying to believe that being scared doesn't mean we should run. Just means we need to be honest about it. Evan pulled her closer, and she came willingly, tucking herself against his side like she belonged there. They stayed like that for hours, talking and kissing and learning the geography of each other in ways that felt both urgent and patient. This wasn't the desperate intensity of the cabin. This was deliberate, a choice they were making together with full awareness of the complications. When Lauren finally left around midnight, Evan stood in his doorway watching her walk to her car, feeling like something fundamental had shifted again. They were really doing this. Despite the professional complications, despite the fear, despite every logical reason to keep things simple, they were choosing each other. His phone buzzed before he'd even closed the door. Thank you for tonight, for dinner, for honesty, for not making me feel foolish for being scared. Thank you for being brave enough to come over. Same time next week? I'll bring wine. You provide the dinosaur facts. Deal. The third week brought breakthrough and complication in equal measure. The transfer approval came through unexpectedly on a Tuesday morning. Lauren's assistant, a terrifyingly efficient woman named Margaret, who seemed to know everything that happened in the office, delivered the news during a project meeting. Ms. Hale, your department transfer has been approved effective immediately. Mr. Mitchell requests you begin transitioning your current projects to interim supervision by end of week. Lauren's expression remained perfectly neutral, but Evan saw her fingers tighten fractionally on her pen. Thank you, Margaret. Please schedule a meeting with Mitchell for this afternoon to discuss transition protocols. Already done. 3 p.m. After Margaret left, the meeting continued, but Evan couldn't focus. This was it. The professional barrier was coming down. In a week, Lauren wouldn't be his supervisor anymore. They could be public, could stop hiding, could... His phone buzzed. A text from Lauren, sent from under the conference table where no one could see. Breathe. Not yet. Still have to survive the transition without anyone getting suspicious. He glanced up to find her watching him with the smallest hint of amusement in her eyes. Right. They still had to be professional. Still had to pretend the transfer was purely career-motivated. Still had to hide what was becoming increasingly difficult to contain. The week of transition was torture. Lauren worked 18-hour days transferring projects and briefing her replacement, a man named Douglas who'd transferred from the Chicago office and seemed utterly bewildered by the pace Lauren maintained. Evan saw her mostly in meetings, watching the exhaustion accumulate in the shadows under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. They managed one lunch, stolen between meetings in a park 6 blocks from the office. Lauren arrived with dark circles and coffee that had gone cold, sinking onto the bench beside him with a sigh that spoke of bone-deep weariness. 5 more days, she said, accepting the sandwich he'd brought her. 5 more days of pretending this transfer is about career development and not about the fact that I'm completely gone over my former employee. Completely gone? Don't fish for compliments. You know exactly what you've done to me. But she was smiling as she said it, leaning against his shoulder in a way that suggested she was too tired to maintain distance. I miss you, which is ridiculous because I see you almost every day. You miss this, being able to be honest. Yes, and I miss kissing you, which we can't do here because Henderson from accounting just walked past, and he's exactly the kind of person who'd notice and tell everyone. Evan glanced over to see Henderson disappearing around the corner. Rain check on the kissing, then. Rain check accepted. Saturday, your place again? I'll bring takeout and we can watch a movie and do all the normal couple things we haven't been able to do. It's a date. Fair warning, though. Mia will be home Sunday morning. Rachel's dropping her off early because of some brunch thing. Lauren stiffened slightly, and Evan felt it immediately. Oh, do you want me to leave before she gets there? I don't want to complicate things. Actually, I was thinking maybe the opposite. Maybe it's time for you to meet her. If you're ready. Evan kept his voice casual, but his heart was hammering. This was the test his mother had warned him about, whether Lauren could handle the reality of his life. No pressure. We can save it for another time if... I'd like to meet her. Lauren sat up, turning to face him. I'm terrified, but I'd like to meet her. What do I need to know? What do I say? Just be yourself. She already loves you based on the fact that you sent Patricia to take care of her. What if she doesn't like me? What if I'm terrible with kids? Then we'll figure it out. Together. Evan took her hand, threading their fingers together. But I don't think that's going to be the problem. Mia's already drawn you 3 pictures. Saturday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and nerves that made Evan clean his apartment twice. Lauren showed up at 6 with Thai food and wine, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater that made her look softer than her usual professional armor. They ate on the couch, her feet tucked under his leg, arguing about movie choices with the comfortable bickering of people who'd known each other far longer than 3 weeks. You want to watch Die Hard, Lauren said, stealing a spring roll from his plate. It's November. Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Die Hard is always appropriate. Fine, but I get to pick next time. Next time. The casual assumption of future felt significant, and Evan pulled her closer, kissing her temple. Deal. They made it 20 minutes into the movie before kissing became more interesting than Bruce Willis. Lauren ended up straddling his lap, her hands in his hair, kissing him with an urgency that suggested she'd been holding back for weeks. Which, Evan supposed, she had. They both had. We should slow down, she murmured against his mouth, even as her hips rocked against his. Probably. Mia's coming tomorrow morning. We should keep things appropriate. Absolutely. Evan's hand slid under her sweater, finding warm skin. Very appropriate. I'm serious, Evan. I don't want to... She broke off with a gasp as his mouth found her neck. I don't want to mess this up by moving too fast. He pulled back, taking in her flushed cheeks and swollen lips and the desire clearly written across her features. Tell me to stop, and I will. I promise. Lauren looked at him for a long moment, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Then she stood, holding out her hand. Bedroom, now, before I lose my nerve. They barely made it. Clothes came off in a trail across the hallway, hands urgent and exploratory, months of attraction finally finding release. It was intense and emotional, and nothing like the careful restraint they'd been maintaining. This was honest, messy, and real, and absolutely right. Afterward, Lauren lay against his chest, her finger tracing patterns on his skin. That was, very not appropriate. Completely inappropriate. Evan pressed a kiss to her hair. Worth it, though. Definitely worth it. She propped herself up to look at him. I should probably go home. Get some sleep before I meet Mia. Or you could stay. Meet her over breakfast. Make it casual. The fear flickered across her face again, but this time she didn't let it win. Okay. Yes. I'll stay. But Evan? Yeah? Thank you. For being patient with me. For understanding why this is scary. Thank you for being brave enough to try anyway. They fell asleep tangled together, and when Evan woke to his alarm at 7, it took him a moment to remember why waking up with Lauren felt both natural and terrifying. Then his phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Running late, dropping Mia off at 9 instead of 8. You're welcome. He had 2 hours to prepare Lauren and himself for the moment that would determine whether this relationship could survive reality. Lauren stirred beside him, her eyes opening slowly. Good morning, he said softly. Morning. She stretched, cat-like, then froze. Oh, right. Mia, today. In 2 hours. Rachel's running late. Is that enough time for me to panic and possibly run away? You're not going to run away. How do you know? Because you're Lauren Hale, and you don't run from things that scare you. You face them head on with perfect posture and a plan. Evan kissed her gently. Besides, Mia's going to love you, I promise. Lauren took a shaky breath, then nodded. Okay, what do I wear? What do I say? Should I have brought a gift? Wear what you're comfortable in. Say hi and answer her questions honestly. And no gift needed. She'll interrogate you about dinosaurs within 5 minutes of meeting you anyway. They got dressed and made coffee, Lauren's nervousness palpable in the way she kept rearranging things on the counter. When the doorbell rang at 9 sharp, she actually jumped. Breathe, Evan said, squeezing her hand. You've got this. He opened the door to find Mia practically vibrating with energy, Rachel behind her looking polished and impatient. Daddy, we saw 3 deer on the way here and Mom almost hit one but didn't, and it was so cool. She stopped mid-sentence, spotting Lauren in the kitchen. Is that Miss Lauren? It is. Come say hi. Evan glanced at Rachel, who was staring at Lauren with undisguised curiosity and something that might have been jealousy. Mia needed no encouragement. She charged past him, skidding to a stop in front of Lauren with wide eyes. You're real. I thought maybe Daddy made you up because he never has friends over except Grandma. Do you really like dinosaurs? Did you like my drawing? Can you stay for pancakes? Lauren blinked, clearly overwhelmed by the barrage of questions. Then she crouched down to Mia's level, and something in her expression shifted, the fear replaced by genuine warmth. I am real. Your drawing was the best thing anyone's given me in months. I don't know as much about dinosaurs as you do, but I'd love to learn, and I would love pancakes, if that's okay with your dad. Mia turned to Evan, her face alight. She's perfect. Can she stay forever? From the doorway, Rachel's voice was sharp. Mia, don't be rude. I'm sure Lauren has other places to be. Actually, I cleared my whole Sunday. Lauren stood, meeting Rachel's gaze directly. If Evan doesn't mind the company, I don't mind at all. Evan moved to stand beside Lauren, a deliberate choice about where his loyalties lay. Rachel's expression hardened. Well, this is new. Didn't waste much time, did you? Rachel, it's fine. I'm late anyway. She looked at Mia. Be good for your father. I'll see you Tuesday. She left without another word, the door closing behind her with more force than necessary. The silence that followed was broken by Mia's practical observation. Mom doesn't like you, but I do. You're pretty and you smell nice, and you said yes to pancakes. She grabbed Lauren's hand. Come on, I'll show you my room while Daddy cooks. I have 17 dinosaurs, and they all have names. Lauren let herself be towed toward the hallway, shooting Evan a look that was equal parts panic and delight. He grinned back, pulling out ingredients for pancakes, and realized this was it, the moment where everything either worked or fell apart. 20 minutes later, he found them in Mia's room, Lauren sitting cross-legged on the floor while Mia explained the complex social hierarchy of her dinosaur collection. Lauren was asking genuine questions, taking Mia's answers seriously, not talking down or patronizing. Pancakes are ready, Evan announced. They ate breakfast together, Mia dominating the conversation with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved and listened to. Lauren answered her questions patiently, admitted when she didn't know something, and never once checked her phone or seemed bored. When Mia spilled syrup on Lauren's jeans, Lauren just laughed and said it gave them character. After breakfast, Mia insisted on showing Lauren her soccer trophies and the bird's nest she'd found and preserved in a shoebox. Lauren examined everything with appropriate seriousness, and Evan fell a little more in love with her with each passing minute. When Mia finally ran off to find a specific book she wanted Lauren to read, Evan pulled Lauren into the kitchen, wrapping his arms around her waist. You're amazing with her. She's amazing, smart and funny and so confident. You've done a great job. Lauren leaned back against him. I was terrified, but this is actually wonderful. She's wonderful. So you're not running away? Not today. She turned in his arms, her hands coming up to frame his face. Thank you for letting me meet her, for trusting me with this part of your life. Thank you for staying, for being brave. Evan kissed her softly, aware that Mia could come back any second but unable to resist. I found it. Mia's voice preceded her down the hallway. Miss Lauren, you have to read this. It's about a T-Rex who wants to be a vegetarian, but everyone keeps assuming she wants to eat them just because of her teeth. Lauren pulled away from Evan with a smile. That sounds like a very important story. We'd better go read it immediately. As Evan watched them settle on the couch together, Mia tucked under Lauren's arm like she belonged there. Something settled in his chest that had been uncertain for weeks. This was right. Complicated and scary and potentially disastrous for a dozen different reasons, but absolutely right. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. How's it going? He snapped a photo of Lauren and Mia reading together and sent it back with a single word. Perfect. She's a keeper then? Yeah, Mom, I think she really is. Lauren stayed until late afternoon, reading books and playing elaborate dinosaur scenarios that Mia directed with the authority of a Hollywood director. When she finally left, Mia watched from the window until Lauren's car disappeared, then turned to Evan with an expression far too knowing for a 7-year-old. She's your girlfriend, right? Evan considered lying, considered deflecting, then remembered his mother's advice about honesty. Yeah, baby, she is. How do you feel about that? Mia climbed onto the couch beside him, her small face serious. Does she make you happy? Like really happy? Not just pretend happy like you were with Mom before the divorce? The question landed like a punch to the chest. Yes, she makes me really happy. Good. Then I like her. Mia snuggled against his side. But Daddy, Mom's not going to like it. She got that face she makes when she's mad but pretending not to be. I know. But Mom's feelings aren't your responsibility to manage, okay? That's between the grown-ups. Okay. Mia was quiet for a moment. Can Miss Lauren come to my soccer game on Saturday? I want to show her my defense moves. I'll ask her. But Mia, this is still new. Miss Lauren and I are still figuring things out, so we need to be a little bit private about it for now. Not a secret, but just between us and the people who need to know. Because of work stuff? Exactly. Because of work stuff. Mia nodded sagely. Adults make everything complicated, but that's okay. I won't tell anyone except maybe Emma, because she's my best friend and she tells me everything about her mom's boyfriend who has a motorcycle. Evan smiled, kissing the top of her head. Deal. You can tell Emma, but maybe don't mention it to Mom yet, okay? I'm not dumb, Daddy. Mom would just get weird about it. Out of the mouths of babes. Monday morning brought the official announcement of Lauren's transfer to the Innovation and Development Department, 3 floors up and completely outside Evan's reporting chain. The email from HR was bland and professional, citing Lauren's expertise and the company's need for her leadership in a growing division. No one questioned it. Department heads shifted around all the time, chasing promotions and projects. But the office gossip mill noticed anyway. Did you hear Hale transferred out? Jenkins caught Evan by the coffee machine that afternoon, his expression gleeful in that way people got when discussing other people's perceived failures. Rumor is she couldn't handle the pressure. Too many complaints about her management style. Evan kept his expression neutral, pouring coffee he didn't want just to have something to do with his hands. Where'd you hear that? Henderson. He said Mitchell was getting complaints about her being too aggressive, too demanding. Classic case of a woman trying too hard to be one of the guys and failing. The urge to defend her was immediate and overwhelming, but Evan forced himself to shrug. She got a promotion, Jenkins. Innovation and Development is a bigger department with a larger budget. Hardly sounds like failure. If you say so. Jenkins added 3 sugars to his coffee, stirring with unnecessary vigor. Personally, I think she realized she was in over her head. Some people just aren't cut out for leadership. Evan left before he said something that would reveal too much, taking his coffee back to his desk where he immediately pulled out his phone. He wanted to text Lauren, to warn her what people were saying, to rage on her behalf about the unfairness of it all. But they'd agreed. Professional distance until the transition was complete. Instead, he focused on work, throwing himself into the stadium design revisions that were due by end of week. The project had become something he was genuinely proud of, each iteration stronger because Lauren had pushed him to trust his instincts. He could see her influence in every detail, the way she taught him to stop second-guessing and start believing in his own vision. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that turned out to be Douglas, Lauren's replacement. Need to meet about the stadium project, my office, 4 p.m. Evan's stomach sank. Douglas had a reputation. Old school, traditional, the kind of architect who thought computer modeling was cheating and anyone under 40 didn't know real design. He'd made his opinion of Lauren's aggressive modernization clear in his first department meeting, suggesting they return to classical principles and proven methods. This wasn't going to go well. Douglas's office was smaller than Lauren's had been, already cluttered with printed plans and physical models despite him only being there a week. He looked up when Evan knocked, his expression suggesting he'd been interrupted from something important. "Brooks, come in. We need to discuss your stadium design." Evan settled into the chair across from the desk, the same chair where he'd sat through countless meetings with Lauren. It felt wrong, like wearing someone else's clothes. "What about it?" "I've reviewed the plans. The environmental integration is ambitious. Perhaps too ambitious." Douglas pulled up the digital model on his screen, frowning. "These solar arrays on the roof structure, the water reclamation systems, it's adding significant cost and complexity. I think we should simplify. Go back to a more traditional approach. The environmental systems are what make the design unique. They're what sold the client in the first place." Evan kept his voice level, professional, but his heart was hammering. They want a stadium that's a showcase for sustainability. Clients want a lot of things until they see the budget. Trust me, Brooks, I've been doing this for 30 years. Traditional works. It's tried and tested. Innovation for innovation's sake is just ego. This isn't ego, it's good design. The systems integrate seamlessly with the structural elements. Removing them would compromise the entire concept. Douglas leaned back in his chair, studying Evan with an expression that was part disappointment, part condescension. "Lauren Hale filled your head with a lot of progressive ideas, didn't she? All this modern sustainability talk. But here's the reality. We're in the business of building structures that last, that work, that don't bankrupt our clients with maintenance costs down the line." The casual dismissal of everything Lauren had taught him, everything she'd built, made Evan's jaw clench. "With respect, sir, this design has been vetted by 3 different engineering firms. The sustainability isn't just talk. It's functional, cost-effective over the building's lifetime, and exactly what the client requested. The client doesn't know what they want. That's why they hire us." Douglas closed the model, the gesture dismissive. "I'm recommending we strip out the solar arrays and water systems. Present them with a traditional design that comes in under budget. They'll thank us for it. And if I disagree, then you're welcome to express that disagreement in writing, through proper channels." Douglas's smile didn't reach his eyes. "But ultimately, I'm the department head. The decision is mine. We'll discuss the revisions in Thursday's project meeting. Have alternative plans ready." Evan left the office feeling like he'd been punched in the gut. Everything he'd worked on for 6 months, every innovation Lauren had encouraged him to fight for, Douglas wanted to strip it away and replace it with exactly the kind of safe, boring design Evan had been doing before Lauren pushed him to be better. He made it to his car before pulling out his phone and calling her. Professional distance be damned. She answered on the second ring. "Evan, what's wrong?" "Douglas wants to gut the stadium design, strip out all the environmental systems and go traditional. He called your approach ego and aggressive modernization." The words tumbled out, frustration and anger bleeding through. "Everything you taught me, everything we built, he wants to erase it." Lauren was quiet for a moment. Then, "Where are you?" "Parking garage." "Stay there. I'm coming to you." She arrived 15 minutes later, parking beside him and sliding into his passenger seat without asking. She was still in work clothes, but her hair was down, and the sight of her made something in Evan's chest unclench slightly. "Tell me everything," she said. So he did. Every dismissive comment, every casual erasure of her influence, every suggestion that his work was somehow tainted by her progressive ideas. Lauren listened without interrupting, her expression growing more closed with each sentence. "This is my fault," she said when he finished. "I pushed you too hard, too fast, made you too visible with innovative designs that threatened the old guard. No, you made me better. You made me brave enough to trust my instincts." Evan turned to face her. "But I don't know how to fight this. He's the department head. He has final say on all projects." "Not quite all." Lauren pulled out her phone, scrolling through contacts with quick, decisive movements. "The client has final say. and I happen to know the lead developer on the stadium project. We went to graduate school together. Lauren, you can't fight my battles for me. I'm not fighting your battle. I'm reminding you that you have ammunition Douglas doesn't know about. She looked up from her phone. The client specifically requested environmental integration. It's in the original RFP, which Douglas clearly didn't bother reading. If he tries to present a traditional design, the client will reject it. You just need to make sure that rejection happens in a way that makes Douglas look incompetent, not you. How? By documenting everything, every meeting, every decision, every instruction Douglas gives you to compromise the design. Create a paper trail that shows you fought for the client's vision and Douglas overruled you. Lauren's voice was calm, professional, but her eyes were fierce. Then, when the client inevitably asks why their requirements were ignored, you have evidence that you tried to deliver what they wanted. That's political maneuvering. I'm terrible at politics. Good thing you're dating someone who's excellent at it. She reached over, squeezing his hand. I know this is scary. I know it feels like everything is falling apart. But you're talented, Evan. More talented than Douglas will ever be. Don't let him convince you otherwise. He's been doing this for 30 years. And doing it the same way for 30 years is exactly why he's threatened by you. Innovation is scary to people who've built careers on repetition. Lauren's grip tightened. Promise me you won't back down. Promise me you'll fight for your design. What if I lose? Then you lose. But at least you'll lose having tried, having believed in yourself. That's worth more than winning by playing it safe. Evan pulled her closer, kissing her hard and grateful. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You're just now noticing. But she was smiling when she said it, and when they broke apart, some of the fear had eased from her expression. We should probably stop meeting in parking garages. People will start to talk. Let them talk. Your transfer is official. We're not violating any ethics policies. No, but we're violating the unwritten rule about workplace relationships being career suicide. Lauren glanced around the garage, as if checking for watchers. Mitchell cornered me today, asked if there was a personal reason for my transfer request. Evan's stomach dropped. What did you say? That my personal life was none of his business, and my transfer was about professional growth. He backed off, but I could see him calculating, trying to figure out if there was gossip to be had. She sighed. We're going to have to be so careful, Evan. One rumor, one person seeing us together outside of work, and suddenly everything I've built becomes the woman who transferred departments for a man. I hate that you have to worry about that. I hate it too. But it's reality. Lauren checked her watch, reluctance crossing her face. I should go. I have a 7 p.m. call with the innovation team about resource allocation. When do I see you again? Really see you, not stolen moments in parking garages? This weekend. Your place? I'll bring dinner and we can... She paused, something shifting in her expression. Actually, I was thinking, maybe I could come to Mia's soccer game on Saturday, if that's okay. She invited me and I don't want to disappoint her. The casual mention of his daughter, the easy inclusion in his life, made Evan's heart ache in the best way. She'd love that. Fair warning, though. Rachel will probably be there. I can handle Rachel. Lauren's voice was confident, but Evan saw the flash of uncertainty. Should I be worried? She's not thrilled about you, but she forfeited the right to have opinions about my relationships when she walked out. Evan kissed her forehead. Come to the game. Meet some of the other parents. Start becoming part of our lives for real. Our lives. I like the sound of that. They separated reluctantly, Lauren heading back to her car while Evan sat for a few more minutes, gathering himself. The conversation with Douglas still stung, but Lauren's advice had given him a strategy. Document everything. Fight for the client's vision. Don't back down. He could do that. He could be brave. Thursday's project meeting was exactly as painful as Evan had anticipated. Douglas presented his revised vision for the stadium. Traditional structure, conventional systems, all the innovation stripped away in favor of what he called timeless design. Several of the senior architects nodded along, comfortable with the familiar approach. Evan waited until Douglas finished, then calmly pulled out the original RFP and read aloud the client's specific requirements for environmental integration and sustainability showcase. The room went quiet. The client was very clear about their priorities, Evan said, keeping his voice level. Removing these systems puts us in direct violation of the contract specifications. Douglas's expression darkened. The contract gives us latitude for professional judgment. Professional judgment in implementation, not in completely abandoning the core concept. Evan met his gaze directly. I'm happy to explore cost-effective ways to achieve the environmental integration, but removing it entirely isn't an option without client approval. Are you questioning my authority, Brooks? I'm trying to ensure we deliver what the client contracted for, sir. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Finally, Mitchell, who'd been observing from the back, spoke up. Brooks makes a valid point. We should at least run the revised concept past the client before finalizing. Cover our bases contractually. Douglas looked like he wanted to argue, but Mitchell's position as managing partner made that impossible. Fine. Brooks, you can present both versions to the client next week. We'll let them decide. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. Evan had stood his ground, had fought for his design without backing down. Several colleagues gave him subtle nods of approval as the meeting broke up, though Henderson pointedly ignored him. That evening, Evan texted Lauren the outcome. Her response was immediate. Proud of you. Knew you had it in you. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate? Your place or mine? Mine. I'll cook. Time you saw where I live. Lauren's apartment was in a high-rise downtown, all modern lines and floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city that probably cost more per month than Evan's mortgage. She answered the door in yoga pants and a faded graduate school t-shirt, her hair in a messy bun, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. Welcome to my fortress of solitude, she said, stepping aside to let him in. Fair warning, it's embarrassingly neat. I stress clean. The apartment was indeed immaculate, but also surprisingly warm. Books lined built-in shelves, plants thrived in strategic locations, and the kitchen looked actually used rather than decorative. It was professional and polished, but also unmistakably Lauren, controlled chaos hidden behind careful presentation. I like it, Evan said, exploring while she finished cooking. It suits you. Organized but not sterile. Impressive but lived in. That's the nicest way anyone's ever said my apartment looks like a control freak lives here. Lauren was making pasta from scratch, her hands working the dough with practiced ease. My mother says it looks like a hotel room. No personal touches, nothing messy or human. Your mother's wrong. Look, this photo of you and someone at a marathon. These plants that are clearly well cared for. The fact that you have a stack of architecture magazines on the coffee table with sticky notes marking pages. Evan moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. It's personal, just subtle about it. I don't know how to be obvious about things, personal things. I know, it's okay. He kissed her neck, feeling her relax back against him. Thank you for letting me in, both literally and figuratively. They ate dinner sitting on her couch, plates balanced on their laps, talking about everything except work. Lauren told him about the half marathon she was training for, her ongoing battle with the building's HOA about allowing a community garden on the roof, the book club she'd joined and immediately regretted when she realized it was more wine drinking than book discussing. I'm boring, she concluded, setting her empty plate aside. My life is work and running and occasionally pretending to read books I've actually only skimmed. You're not boring, you're focused. There's a difference. Evan pulled her closer, and she came willingly, tucking her head under his chin. Though I have to say the idea of you at a wine-fueled book club trying to discuss literature you haven't read is deeply entertaining. It was mortifying. I've been faking my way through Infinite Jest for 3 months. I don't think anyone actually reads that book. I think we all just pretend. Noted. No pretentious literature is gifts. What would you get me if you were getting me a gift? The question was casual, but Evan heard the vulnerability underneath, like she was testing whether he actually knew her. Probably something practical that you'd never buy yourself. Nice running headphones. Or a journal, since you seem like the type who'd want to document things but never quite gets around to it. Or maybe something for your apartment. That empty wall in your bedroom could use art, and I know a gallery that shows local architects' sketches. Lauren pulled back to look at him, something soft and surprised in her expression. You've been paying attention. Of course I have. You're important to me. Evan, she stopped, seeming to struggle with something. I need to tell you something. About me. About how I am in relationships. I'm not good at the romantic stuff, the grand gestures and constant communication and neediness that people seem to expect. I get absorbed in work and forget to text back. I need alone time to recharge. I'm probably going to disappoint you. Or maybe I'm going to appreciate having a girlfriend who understands that sometimes I just need quiet after a long day with a very talkative 7-year-old, who doesn't need constant entertainment because she has her own full life, who texts me when she has something to say, not because she feels obligated. Evan framed her face with his hands. Stop expecting yourself to fail. You're doing fine. How can you be so sure? Because you're here. Because you came to meet Mia even though you were terrified. Because you're fighting for me professionally even though it would be easier to stay quiet. Because you let me see your perfectly organized apartment and admitted you fake read books. He kissed her softly. You keep showing up, Lauren. That's what matters. She kissed him back with an intensity that suggested words were insufficient, and they ended up in her bedroom with its empty wall and view of the city lights. Making love with her felt different than it had at his place, less urgent, more exploratory. This was her space, her sanctuary, and she was trusting him with it. Afterward, they lay tangled together while Lauren traced the architecture of his collarbone like she was studying a design. Saturday's going to be interesting, she said quietly. Meeting the other soccer parents, being around Rachel, making this relationship public to your world. Nervous? Terrified. What if they judge me? What if they think I'm too serious or too cold or just wrong for you? Then they don't know you, the real you. Evan caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. But for what it's worth, I think they're going to love you. Mia already adores you, and kids are excellent judges of character. Kids are also easily impressed by anyone who pays attention to them. Stop minimizing. You're good with her, natural in a way you probably don't even realize. He shifted so he could see her face. What are you really scared of? Lauren was quiet for so long Evan thought she might not answer. Then, I'm scared I'm going to let her down. That she'll get attached and I'll mess this up somehow, and she'll get hurt. I know what it's like to be the kid whose parents' relationship falls apart. I don't want to do that to her. We're not going to fall apart. You can't promise that. No. But I can promise I'm going to try my hardest not to let that happen. And I can promise that Mia's tough. She's been through her parents' divorce. She knows relationships are complicated. But she also knows when someone genuinely cares about her, and she can see that you do. I do care about her, more than I expected to. Lauren's voice was small, uncertain. Is that weird, to care so much about someone else's kid after only meeting her once? It's not weird. It's exactly right. Evan pulled her closer, and she relaxed against him with a sigh that spoke of exhaustion and relief in equal measure. Get some sleep. Saturday will be here before you know it, and 7-year-olds playing soccer is surprisingly intense. Should I wear something specific? I don't want to look like I'm trying too hard. Jeans and a jacket, comfortable shoes because the field gets muddy, and maybe a hat because November soccer means freezing your ears off. He kissed her temple. You're overthinking this. I overthink everything. I know, it's part of your charm. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear, perfect weather for the last game of the season. Evan and Mia arrived early to find the field already filling with families, portable chairs, and thermoses of coffee appearing like magic. Mia spotted her teammates and took off running, leaving Evan to set up their usual spot near the halfway line. Lauren arrived 20 minutes before game time, looking nervous and beautiful in dark jeans and a camel-colored coat that probably cost more than Evan's car payment. She clutched a travel mug like a shield, scanning the crowd until she spotted him. Hi, she said, slightly breathless. I'm not late, am I? I left early, but then I couldn't find parking, and you're perfect. Evan pulled her in for a quick kiss, aware of eyes on them, but past caring. Mia's been asking about you all morning. She wants you to watch her defensive strategy. I don't know anything about soccer. Neither do most of these parents. You'll fit right in. He introduced her to the other families he knew. Mark and Jennifer, whose daughter Emma was Mia's best friend, Carlos and his wife, whose son played goalie, the Rodriguez family, whose twin boys were terrors on the field in the best way, Everyone was friendly, welcoming, making space for Lauren in their circle without awkward questions. Then Rachel arrived. She stood on the opposite sideline, deliberately positioning herself far from Evan and Lauren, but her presence was impossible to ignore. She'd brought her husband and the baby, the picture of her new life, and Evan watched Lauren stiffen beside him. "That's her," Lauren said quietly. It wasn't a question. "That's her. Ignore her. She doesn't get to ruin this." The game started, and for a while, it was easy to focus on Mia rather than Rachel's pointed stares. Mia played with her usual ferocity, throwing herself into every play like it mattered more than anything in the world. Lauren cheered when the other parents cheered, winced when Mia took a hard fall, and gradually relaxed into the rhythm of youth sports. At halftime, Mia jogged over to their side, breathless and grass-stained. "Did you see me block that goal attempt? I used the defensive strategy Coach taught us." "You were amazing," Lauren said, and Mia's face lit up. "That slide tackle in the first half was perfectly timed." "You know about slide tackles?" "I may have watched some YouTube videos about soccer defense this week. Research." Mia threw her arms around Lauren's waist, spontaneous and unself-conscious, and Evan watched Lauren freeze for just a second before hugging her back. Over Mia's head, their eyes met, and he saw the wonder there, like she couldn't quite believe this was her life now. "I have to get back," Mia said, pulling away. "But stay right there, okay? I want you to see the second half." She ran back to her team, and Lauren sat down heavily on their portable chair. "She hugged me. She likes you." "I know, but she hugged me, voluntarily, without being prompted. Kids are honest about affection. If she didn't want to hug you, she wouldn't have." Evan handed her his coffee. "You're doing great. Stop worrying." The second half was more intense, the score tied and both teams fighting for the win. Mia was everywhere, defending with determination that made Evan's heart swell with pride. When her team finally scored the winning goal in the last 2 minutes, the sideline erupted in cheers. After the game, while Mia collected high fives from her teammates, Rachel crossed the field toward them. Evan felt Lauren tense beside him, her hand finding his. "Mia played well," Rachel said, her tone neutral but her eyes assessing Lauren like a threat. "I'm sure she appreciated having such a large cheering section." "She's a great player," Lauren said evenly. "You must be very proud." "I am, though I worry about her getting too attached to temporary fixtures in her father's life." The words were pleasant, but the meaning was clear. "Lauren's not temporary." Evan kept his voice calm, but his hand tightened on hers. "And this isn't the place for this conversation." "Of course not. I wouldn't want to make a scene in front of Mia's friends." Rachel's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I just think it's interesting how quickly you've moved on. Found someone to fill the space I left." "You left by choice," Evan said quietly. "And yes, I've moved on. That's what people do after divorce. They build new lives." "With their supervisors? How professional." Rachel's gaze shifted to Lauren. "Did you know he used to complain about you? Called you impossible to please?" Lauren's expression remained perfectly composed. "I was demanding. Good supervisors usually are. But Evan rose to the challenge, which is why his work is some of the best in the firm." She met Rachel's eyes directly. "And for the record, I'm not trying to replace you. I'm just trying to be part of his life going forward. That includes Mia, who is remarkable and deserves people who see that." The tension stretched between them until Mia came running up, oblivious to the standoff. "Mom, did you see the goal? Did you see how I assisted?" "I saw, baby. You were wonderful." Rachel's expression softened genuinely for her daughter. "I'll see you Tuesday, okay? Have fun with your dad." She left with her new family, and Evan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Lauren was still rigid beside him, her professional mask firmly in place. "I'm sorry," he said. "She had no right. She's scared of being replaced, of Mia loving someone else, of you being happy without her." Lauren watched Rachel's retreating figure. "I get it. Doesn't make it pleasant, but I understand it. You were amazing, calm and dignified, and everything she wasn't." Years of practice handling hostile colleagues prepared me well for hostile ex-wives. But Lauren's hand was shaking slightly when she released his. "Can we go? I think I've had enough public relationship debut for one day." They collected Mia, who was still high on victory and chattered the entire drive about every play and every detail. Lauren sat in the back seat with her, listening with genuine interest, and Evan watched them in the rearview mirror and felt something shift irrevocably in his chest. This was his life now. This woman who'd been a stranger 6 weeks ago, who'd terrified him and challenged him and made him want to be braver. This woman who researched soccer strategies to impress his daughter and faced down his ex-wife with grace and stood beside him while his whole world shifted. At his apartment, Mia disappeared to shower off the field dirt, leaving Evan and Lauren alone in the kitchen. Lauren leaned against the counter, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. That was harder than I expected, she admitted. Not the game, the Rachel part, the being scrutinized by every parent there, wondering if I'm good enough for you. You're more than good enough. How do you know? We've been dating for what, a month? And most of that was hiding in stolen moments. This is the first time we've been public, really public, and it's terrifying. Evan moved closer, bracketing her against the counter with his arms. I know because I see how you are with Mia, how you researched soccer defense even though you don't care about sports, how you faced down Rachel without losing your composure, how you showed up today even though you were scared because it mattered to my daughter. What if that's not enough? What if... He kissed her, cutting off the spiral of fear. When he pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. It's enough, he said softly. You're enough. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and just be here with me. I'm trying. It's just hard to believe this is real sometimes. Then let me believe for both of us. Evan rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling in love with you, Lauren. Have been since that cabin. Maybe even before. And I know it's fast and complicated and probably inadvisable by every professional standard. But it's true. Lauren's breath caught. Evan, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know, needed you to understand that this isn't casual for me. You're not filling a space Rachel left. You're creating something entirely new. I love you too. The words came out rushed, like she was afraid if she didn't say them immediately, she'd lose her nerve. I'm terrified of it, but I do. I love how you see the best in people. How you're patient with my fears and brave when I'm not. How you make me want to be softer without feeling weak. They stood like that for a long moment, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other in. From down the hall, they could hear Mia singing off-key in the shower. So what now? Lauren asked. Where do we go from here? Forward? Together? Taking it one day at a time. Evan kissed her softly. Starting with right now, where I'm going to order pizza and we're going to celebrate Mia's win, and you're going to see exactly what normal weekend evenings look like in the Brooks household. Will there be dinosaurs? Almost certainly. Lauren smiled, real and genuine and utterly beautiful. Then I'm in. The pizza arrived 20 minutes later, and they ate sprawled on the living room floor while Mia demonstrated her soccer moves using rolled-up socks as a ball. Lauren laughed when one of the socks hit her in the face, then launched into an impromptu sockball battle that left all three of them breathless and happy. Evan captured a photo of Lauren and Mia mid-laugh, faces flushed and eyes bright, and knew he'd treasure it forever, the moment his two worlds fully merged. Over the following weeks, life settled into a rhythm that felt both new and inevitable. Lauren came to dinner twice a week, sometimes bringing work that she and Evan would tackle together after Mia went to bed, their laptops side by side at the kitchen table. She attended Mia's school play where Mia played a very enthusiastic tree, sat through a parent-teacher conference that Evan had dreaded doing alone, and gradually became a fixture in their lives that felt as essential as breathing. At work, the stadium project became a battleground. The client meeting where Evan presented both designs, Douglas's traditional approach and his own environmental integration, went exactly as Lauren had predicted. The developers were appalled that their specific requirements had been considered optional, and they made their preference clear immediately. This is what we hired Meyer and Associates for, the lead developer said, pointing to Evan's design. Innovation, sustainability, something that makes a statement. Not this, he gestured dismissively at Douglas's traditional rendering, generic structure that could be anywhere. Douglas's face went red, but he maintained composure. The traditional approach is more cost-effective in the short term. We're not interested in short term. We want a building that will be relevant in 50 years. The developer turned to Mitchell, who'd accompanied them to the meeting. Is there a reason your department head tried to override the contract specifications? Mitchell's expression was carefully neutral, but Evan could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. There seems to have been a miscommunication about priorities. Rest assured, we'll proceed with the environmental integration as specified. After the meeting, Mitchell pulled Evan aside. Well played. You documented everything, didn't you? I wanted to make sure the client's vision was protected. And you made Douglas look incompetent in the process. That takes either courage or stupidity. I'm not sure which. Mitchell studied him. Lauren Hale taught you that, didn't she? How to build a paper trail, how to protect yourself politically. Evan kept his expression neutral. She taught me to stand up for good design. Among other things, I'm sure. Mitchell's tone suggested he knew more than he was saying. You know, people are talking about why she really transferred, about whether there was something between you two. Evan's stomach dropped, but he met Mitchell's gaze directly. People always talk. Usually they're wrong. Usually, but not always. Mitchell clapped him on the shoulder. Keep producing work like this, and I don't care who you're dating. Just don't let it become a distraction or a liability. Understood? Understood. The conversation left Evan unsettled. He texted Lauren immediately. Mitchell knows, or suspects. He basically told me to keep it quiet, but didn't explicitly forbid it. Her response came quickly. Expected. As long as we're not violating ethics policies, he can't do anything. How did the client meeting go? They chose my design. Douglas is furious. Good. You deserved that win. Celebrate tonight? Can't. Mia has a science project due tomorrow that we haven't started because someone, me, forgot about it. Need help? I'm excellent at last-minute projects. Comes from years of deadline panic. Evan smiled at his phone. That is, you'd really come help with a third-grade volcano? I'll bring baking soda and food coloring. See you in an hour. She showed up with supplies and enthusiasm, and together they built what Mia declared was the best volcano in the whole class. Lauren's attention to structural detail turned what should have been a messy disaster into an actual working model, complete with a lava flow that Mia demonstrated approximately 17 times. You're good at this, Evan said, watching Lauren help Mia write the project description in careful third-grade handwriting. I like building things, even if they're made of paper mache and food coloring. Lauren glanced up at him, her expression soft. And I like being here, with both of you. It feels right. Later, after Mia was asleep and they were cleaning up the kitchen, Lauren brought up something that had clearly been on her mind. Rachel texted me. Evan stopped mid-dish. What? She asked to meet for coffee. Said she wanted to talk, just the two of us. No drama. Lauren dried a plate with careful precision. Should I go? Do you want to? I think I need to, not for her sake, but for mine. I need to understand what I'm walking into, the history, the complications, what Mia's experienced. Lauren set the plate down. But I wanted to check with you first. Make sure you're okay with it. I trust you. Both to handle the conversation and to walk away if she crosses a line. Evan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her waist. But be prepared. Rachel can be charming when she wants something, and manipulative when charm doesn't work. I'll be careful. The coffee meeting happened on a Thursday afternoon at a place halfway between Lauren's office and Rachel's house. Lauren texted Evan before she went in. Going radio silent for an hour. If you don't hear from me by 4, send reinforcements. His response? I believe in you, but I'm keeping my phone close just in case. Lauren found Rachel already seated, 2 coffees waiting. She looked different than she had at the soccer game, softer, less defensive, almost vulnerable. Thank you for coming, Rachel said as Lauren sat down. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I should, but I figured we should clear the air. Lauren accepted the coffee, noting it was made exactly how she liked it. Rachel had done her homework. I owe you an apology. What I said at the game was unfair. You're not trying to replace me, and I had no right to suggest you were. Rachel stirred her own coffee, not meeting Lauren's eyes. The truth is, I'm jealous of how easily you fit into their lives, of how Mia talks about you like you hung the moon, of how happy Evan seems. Lauren hadn't expected honesty. It disarmed her. I'm not trying to make you feel replaced. I know. That's what makes it harder. Rachel finally looked up. I left because I couldn't handle the life we had. The routine, the responsibility, the way everything revolved around Mia's schedule. I wanted my 20s back, wanted to feel young and spontaneous again. And I got that. I have a husband who loves adventure, a new baby, a life that feels exciting. But I also left a daughter who needed me, who still needs me, even though I'm not there most of the time. Rachel's voice cracked slightly. And watching you step into that role, seeing how naturally you connect with her, it makes me confront what I gave up. I'm not trying to be her mother. You're her mother. Nothing changes that. Maybe not replace, but supplement. Be the stable female presence she needs when she's with Evan. Rachel took a shaky breath. I need to know you're serious. About him, about this relationship. Because if you're not, if you're going to leave when it gets hard, I need to protect Mia from getting too attached. Lauren set down her coffee, meeting Rachel's gaze directly. I'm in love with him. I'm terrified of it, but I am. And I care about Mia more than I thought possible. I'm not going anywhere. Even when it's hard? Even when Evan's stressed about custody arrangements or money or juggling work and parenting? Even when Mia has bad days and takes it out on the nearest adult? Even then, Lauren's voice was steady. Look, I know my track record. I'm the woman who chose career over everything, who never made space for relationships because they felt like distractions. But Evan isn't a distraction. He makes me want to build a life outside of work. And Mia, she paused, emotion catching in her throat. Mia makes me want to be the kind of person worth looking up to. Rachel studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, I believe you. But Lauren, he's been hurt before. By me. If you're going to do this, be all in. Don't hold back because you're scared or because it's complicated. He deserves someone who chooses him completely. I know. I'm trying. But try harder. Because that little girl in there, she's already chosen you. Don't make her regret it. They talked for another 30 minutes, establishing boundaries and expectations. Rachel would always be Mia's mother, would always have that primary relationship. But Lauren could be the supportive adult presence when Mia was with Evan, could attend school events and soccer games, could be part of Mia's life in a real way. When Lauren left, she felt lighter somehow, like she'd passed a test she hadn't known she was taking. She texted Evan immediately. Survived. Actually went well. Tell you everything tonight. His response made her smile. Proud of you. Also slightly terrified of what Rachel said to make you text in complete sentences instead of your usual fragments. She said, I need to be all in. Turns out I already am. Good. Because so am I. December arrived with its usual chaos of holidays and deadlines. The stadium project was approved for construction, with Evan's environmental design intact, and his name prominently featured in the press release. Douglas maintained professional courtesy, but clearly resented being overruled, which meant Evan's next few projects received extra scrutiny. But Lauren's transfer had created an unexpected opportunity. Innovation and development needed an architect for a sustainable housing initiative, and Lauren recruited Evan directly. Working together again, this time as equals rather than supervisor and employee, reminded them both of why they'd connected in the first place. Their professional respect had been the foundation, everything else built on top of that. We're good at this, Lauren said one evening, reviewing plans spread across her apartment floor. The working together thing, we complement each other. You mean you keep me from second-guessing myself and I keep you from overcomplicating simple solutions? Exactly that. She crawled across the plans to kiss him. We should do this more often. Collaborate professionally. People will definitely talk then. Let them. I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending you're not the best thing that's happened to me in years. Evan pulled her into his lap, the plans forgotten. Are you saying you want to go public? Like, officially? I'm saying I want to stop caring what other people think. We're not violating any policies. We're both good at our jobs. If people want to gossip, that's their problem, not ours. When did you get so brave? You've been rubbing off on me. It's annoying. But she was smiling, and when she kissed him, it tasted like freedom. Christmas brought its own challenges. Mia wanted Lauren at their traditional Christmas morning breakfast, but Rachel had Mia Christmas Eve through Christmas afternoon. The compromise, Lauren joining them for Christmas dinner, felt significant. This wasn't hiding anymore. This was integrating their lives completely. Evan's parents came to dinner too, driving up from their retirement community despite his mother's recent hip surgery. His father took one look at Lauren, helping Mia set the table while explaining architectural principles of structural stability, and pulled Evan aside in the kitchen. "She's the one, isn't she? The woman from the storm." "Yeah, Dad, she's the one." "Good. Your mother and I like her. She's got spine, and she's good with Mia, which is all that really matters." His father clapped him on the shoulder. "Don't screw this up. Wasn't planning on it." Dinner was chaotic and perfect. Mia dominated conversation with detailed explanations of every gift she'd received that morning. Lauren and Evan's mother bonded over their shared frustration with men who didn't follow recipes. And his father told embarrassing stories about Evan's childhood that made Lauren laugh until she cried. After dinner, while Mia showed Evan's parents her room and its ever-expanding dinosaur collection, Lauren and Evan cleaned up together in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, he was drying, and it felt so domestic and comfortable that Evan almost didn't want to disrupt it with what he'd been planning. Almost. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small wrapped box from his pocket. Lauren turned, soap bubbles still on her hands. "Evan, we said no gifts, just dinner and family time." "This isn't a Christmas gift exactly. It's more of a statement of intent." He handed her the box, suddenly nervous. "Open it." Inside was a key, simple, brass, clearly not new. Lauren lifted it out, confused. "A key?" "To here. To my apartment. To our life." Evan took her hands, not caring about the soap. "I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But I want you here, Lauren, not just for scheduled dinners and weekend visits. I want you to have a space here, a place to keep things, a reason to stay over without planning it first. You're giving me a key to your apartment. I'm giving you a key to my life, to a future where you're not a guest or a visitor, but someone who belongs here, with me, with us." He squeezed her hands. "No pressure. If it's too much, we can—" She kissed him, hard and certain, the key pressed between their joined hands. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. I want that too. I want to belong here." From down the hall, they heard Mia's delighted shriek. "Grandma, come see my new ankylosaurus. It has a real club tail." Lauren laughed through her tears. "Your life is very loud. Our life. And yeah, it is. Still want in? More than anything." The months that followed brought their own adjustments. Lauren kept clothes in Evan's closet, toiletries in his bathroom, coffee she actually liked in his kitchen. She learned Mia's schedule by heart. Soccer practice, Tuesdays and Thursdays, science club on Wednesdays, the standing arrangement with Emma on Saturday mornings. She became a fixture at school events, someone the teachers greeted by name, another adult in Mia's support network. It wasn't always smooth. There were nights when work kept Lauren at the office until 10 and Evan had to handle bedtime routines alone. There were mornings when Mia was difficult and Lauren didn't know how to help. There were moments when the reality of blending lives felt overwhelming for both of them. But they figured it out, together. In March, Lauren's innovation and development team won a major contract, a sustainable housing development that would showcase everything she'd been working toward. The celebration dinner included Evan and Mia, because by then it was understood that Lauren's victories were their victories too. "Speech," someone called, and Lauren stood reluctantly, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "I'm not good at speeches," she started, then caught Evan's eye across the table. He smiled encouragingly, and she took a breath. "A year ago, I would have celebrated this alone. Worked late, sent some emails, maybe had a glass of wine by myself, and called it a victory. I thought that's what success looked like. Personal achievement, professional recognition, being undeniably excellent at what I do." She paused, looking around at the team she'd built. "But somewhere along the way, I learned that success looks different than I thought. It looks like people who challenge you to be better, who support you when things are hard, who remind you that being excellent isn't the same as being human." Her gaze found Evan again. It looks like finding someone who sees past the armor to who you really are and chooses you anyway, who makes space in their life for you, complications and all. Mia, who'd been coloring quietly beside Evan, looked up. Miss Lauren? Are you talking about Daddy? Laughter rippled through the room, and Lauren's professional composure cracked into a genuine smile. Yeah, Mia, I'm talking about your dad. Good, because he talks about you all the time. It's actually kind of annoying. More laughter, and Lauren sat down quickly, her cheeks flushed. Under the table, Evan found her hand and squeezed. That night, after Mia was asleep and they were curled together on the couch, Lauren brought up something she'd clearly been thinking about. I've been looking at places. Bigger apartments. Maybe a house, if we could afford it together. Evan's heart skipped. Together? My lease is up in June, and I'm here most nights anyway. Mia's stuff is starting to overflow into my apartment because she forgets things, and I've learned to keep emergency supplies. Lauren turned to face him fully. I want to stop splitting our lives between two places. I want to wake up with you every morning, not just the nights I happen to stay over. I want a home, Evan, with you and Mia. You're asking me to move in together. I'm asking if you want to build something permanent, if you're ready for that. She looked vulnerable in a way he rarely saw, all her usual confidence stripped away to reveal the fear underneath. If it's too soon, I understand, but I need to know if we're working towards something or if... He kissed her, cutting off the spiral of doubt. Yes. 100 times yes. Let's find a place. A home. For all three of us. Really? Really, I've been waiting for you to be ready. Didn't want to push. I'm ready. Terrified, but ready. They started looking at houses the following weekend. Places with yards for Mia to play in. Home offices for both of them. Neighborhoods with good schools and parks. Rachel had opinions, of course, but she also grudgingly admitted that having Mia in a stable, permanent home was good for everyone. By May, they'd found it. A 3-bedroom craftsman with a porch perfect for watching soccer practice and a kitchen big enough for Sunday morning pancake chaos. It needed work, but Evan could see the potential immediately, and Lauren loved the built-in bookshelves and the way light streamed through the windows. This one, Mia announced, running through the empty rooms with Emma in tow. This is our house. Evan and Lauren stood in the living room, watching the girls explore, and something settled in his chest that had been restless since the divorce. This was right. This woman beside him, who'd been a stranger a year ago. This house that would become a home. This life they were building together. Complicated and imperfect and absolutely real. You okay? Lauren asked, noticing his silence. More than okay. I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Me too. She leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her waist. Scared, but happy. Always scared. Always. But less so with you. They moved in mid-June, the process chaotic with Mia's enthusiastic help, and both sets of parents offering advice nobody asked for. Evan's father and Lauren's mother, who'd flown in from Arizona and turned out to be far warmer than Lauren had described, bonded over their shared exasperation with moving logistics. Rachel even helped with Mia's room, setting aside her complicated feelings to make sure her daughter felt settled. The first night in the new house, they ordered pizza and ate sitting on the floor because the dining table hadn't been assembled yet. Mia fell asleep on the couch during a movie, exhausted from the day's excitement. Evan carried her to bed while Lauren cleaned up their minimal mess. When he returned, Lauren was standing at the window looking out at their yard, their street, their new neighborhood. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, and she leaned back against him with a contented sigh. This is real, isn't it? She said softly. We actually did this, bought a house together, merged our lives completely. Having second thoughts? No, just amazed. A year ago, I was alone in my apartment, convinced relationships were distractions I couldn't afford. Now I'm standing in a house with the man I love and his daughter who somehow became part of my heart, and it's the most right thing I've ever done. Our daughter, Evan corrected gently. Maybe not legally, not yet. But in all the ways that matter, she's ours. Lauren turned in his arms, her eyes bright. Ours. I like the sound of that.
Good, because I was thinking. He paused, suddenly nervous about what he was about to propose. What if we made it official? Not just the living together part, all of it. Evan Brooks, are you proposing to me in our empty living room while wearing a moving company t-shirt? I absolutely am, because this is us, practical and unplanned and real.
I don't have a ring yet, and this isn't romantic, but I don't want to wait for the perfect moment. This is the perfect moment. Right here, right now, building a life together. Lauren's laugh was watery, emotional. You're supposed to get on one knee. I'm supposed to do a lot of things, but with you, I've learned that supposed to doesn't matter as much as what feels right. He took her hands. Marry me, Lauren. Not because it's the next logical step or because it's what people expect. Marry me because I love you, because you make me brave, because I want to spend the rest of my life building things with you, houses and careers and a family and a future. Yes. The word came out choked, but certain. Yes, I'll marry you on one condition. Anything. You have to let me help you redesign the master bathroom, because those fixtures are a crime against architecture. Evan laughed and kissed her, and somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked as Mia, who was definitely not as asleep as they'd thought, whispered to herself, I knew it. I totally knew it. They were married in September, exactly 1 year after the blizzard that had trapped them in Cabin 7. The ceremony was small, family, close friends, and every member of Mia's soccer team because she'd insisted. They got married in their backyard under trees just beginning to turn autumn colors, with vows they'd written themselves. Evan promised to always trust Lauren's instincts, to give her space when she needed it, and closeness when she craved it, to build a life worthy of her courage in choosing him. Lauren promised to be patient with his doubt, to show up for Mia's games and school plays, to stop running from happiness just because happiness felt unfamiliar. Mia served as ring bearer and made a speech during the reception that was equal parts touching and embarrassing, detailing exactly how she'd known they were perfect for each other from the moment Lauren had researched soccer defense strategies. Rachel attended with her family, no longer threatened but genuinely happy for her daughter's expanded family structure. Even Douglas showed up, having apparently decided that holding grudges was less professionally useful than networking. Mitchell gave a toast that managed to be both heartfelt and politically astute, praising their professional accomplishments while subtly reminding everyone that workplace relationships required careful navigation. Henderson from accounting got drunk and admitted he'd always found Lauren intimidating but respected her tremendously, which Lauren took as a compliment. But the best moment came late in the evening when most guests had left and the three of them, Evan, Lauren, and Mia, sat on the porch steps watching the last of the sunset. Mia was between them, her head on Lauren's shoulder, already half asleep in her flower girl dress. This is my family now, right? Mia asked drowsily. Like, officially official? Officially official, Lauren confirmed, pressing a kiss to her hair. Is that okay with you? It's perfect. I always wanted a bonus mom who was good at science projects. Bonus mom. I like that. Lauren looked at Evan over Mia's head, her eyes shining. Thank you. For what? For the storm, for being trapped in that cabin, for seeing past the Ice Queen to who I really was, for giving me this. She gestured at the house, the remains of the celebration, the life they'd built, when I didn't even know I wanted it. Thank you for being brave enough to stay, for choosing us even when it was scary. They sat there as twilight deepened into night, three people who'd found each other through chance and choice, through blizzards and soccer games and architectural plans, three people who'd learned that sometimes the best things in life come from being trapped in exactly the wrong moment with exactly the right person. Inside the house, fairy lights still twinkled. Tomorrow they'd clean up, return to work, resume the ordinary rhythms of life. But tonight, on their porch, in their home, they were exactly where they were meant to be. Evan thought back to that night in Cabin 7, cold and uncertain, holding a woman he barely knew while a storm raged outside. He'd been scared then of so many things: his career, his ex-wife's judgment, his ability to be a good father while building a life that mattered. He'd had no idea that the woman in his arms would become his wife, his partner, the person who'd teach him that being brave didn't mean not being scared. It meant being scared and showing up anyway. Lauren had taught him that. had shown him through her own fear and courage that vulnerability wasn't weakness, that letting someone in didn't mean losing yourself, that building a life with another person could make you more yourself, not less. And Mia, beautiful, perceptive Mia, had welcomed Lauren into their family with the uncomplicated acceptance that children specialize in, seeing immediately what the adults took months to figure out, that Lauren belonged with them, that love expanded rather than divided, that families came in all configurations, and this one was exactly right. "We should get her to bed," Lauren murmured, looking down at Mia, who'd fully fallen asleep against her shoulder. "Big day tomorrow. She has that dinosaur presentation at school."
Oh, she's been practicing for weeks. Did you know the Pachycephalosaurus had a skull 9 inches thick? I did, actually, because someone in this family won't stop talking about dinosaurs at dinner. But Lauren was smiling, carefully shifting to lift Mia without waking her. Evan stood, stretching, then held out his hand to help Lauren up. She took it automatically, the gesture so natural now that neither of them thought about it. Together they carried Mia inside, tucked her into bed still in her flower girl dress because waking her to change seemed cruel, then stood in the doorway for a moment watching her sleep. "She's ours," Lauren whispered, wonder in her voice. "How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky. That storm, that cabin, that impossible night that changed everything. Best blizzard of my life. Mine too." They turned off the light and headed to their own room, to their own bed, to a future that stretched out ahead of them full of ordinary moments and extraordinary love. And as Evan drifted off to sleep with Lauren curled against him, her warmth familiar now, her presence essential, he thought about all the ways life could surprise you, about how being trapped could set you free, about how the person who scared you most could become the person who made you bravest, about how sometimes when everything felt wrong, the universe was actually moving you toward exactly where you needed to be. The blizzard had passed, the storm had ended, but what it left behind, this life, this love, this family, was worth every moment of cold, every second of fear, every risk they'd taken by choosing each other. Outside, the September night was clear and calm, stars visible in a way they rarely were in the city. Inside, 3 people slept peacefully, safe and loved and home. And somewhere in the mountains, cabin 7 sat empty, waiting for the next storm, the next 2 strangers who might find each other in the darkness. But that was a different story for a different time. This story, Evan and Lauren's story, had reached its happy ending. Not perfect, because life was never perfect, but real and messy and absolutely right. The kind of ending that was really just the beginning of everything else. The night that wasn't supposed to matter had mattered more than either of them could have imagined. And they'd built a life on that foundation, a life worth living, worth fighting for, worth choosing every single day. Together.